My
I was
grandson
very
Leo
proud of all
called
the
me.
work we did.
His voice
It
was
was really
shaking. Grandpa,
a testament to
Grandpa,
the
you
fact
gotta
that
believe me.
people care.
I'm at the diner across
It's
from
a
the Shady
journey
Pines
that
motel.
really
I could hear
requires
traffic in
you
the
to
background.
be honest with
I
yourself.
just saw her. I just saw Grandma Evelyn. She
It
just went into a room with
was
7
an
guys.
unbelievable
I
experience.
muted the TV. 7 guys, Leo, what
I
kind
knew
of
it was
prank is
time for
this?
me to
You're
go
17, not 7.
So I walked away.
I was
and that
about to
the
hang
end of
up,
that.
feeling my anger rise. I'm not kidding, Grandpa, I saw her. I just sighed.
I learned an important lesson
I turned to
that
the
day.
woman sitting in the armchair right next to me, knitting a blue scarf. Leo,
So for me,
I said,
that's what
my
always
voice
stuck
heavy
with
with
me,
annoyance.
that memory.
What are you talking about? Your grandmother is sitting right here next to me. Before I tell you what happened next, what I found out, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. If you've ever felt like you were the last person to know the truth in your own home, hit that like button and subscribe. I hung up the phone. I didn't even say goodbye. Shady Pines Motel. 7 men. What absolute nonsense. I let out a heavy sigh, trying to rub the tension from my temples. 70 years old, and this is what I get. Crank calls from my own grandson, but as I stared at the blank television screen, a cold feeling started to creep up my spine. Leo wasn't that kind of kid. He wasn't a liar. He wasn't prone to flights of fancy. He was a good kid, quiet, smart. He always noticed things. My annoyance started to curdle into something else. Confusion. A deep, unsettling doubt. I turned back to the armchair. Evelyn. I started ready to laugh this whole thing off with her. You won't believe what Leo just said. But she didn't look up from her knitting. The needles were clicking at a furious pace. Evelyn, I said a little louder. She finally stopped, but she didn't look at me. She looked at the clock on the mantelpiece. Oh goodness, look at the time, she said. Her voice sounded different. A little higher, a little faster than usual. That was my book club calling just before Leo did. I completely forgot. I have to go, I'm presenting tonight. She stood up quickly, grabbing her purse from the floor. But don't you worry, Gregory, she said, patting my shoulder as she walked past. Marlene will be here any minute. She's bringing over that lasagna you like. I just sat there frozen. Did she say? Marlene was coming over. Marlene was her identical twin sister. They looked so alike that even I had trouble telling them apart from a distance. But up close, after 45 years of marriage, I knew my wife's scent. I knew the specific way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. I knew the soft, familiar rasp in her voice. And the woman who just walked out the door. Her voice was higher. She smelled faintly of a different perfume, something floral, not Evelyn's usual lavender. My blood ran cold. I stood up and walked to the front door, yanking it open. She was already getting into her car. Marlene, I yelled. The woman froze, one foot in the car. She turned around slowly. Her face, usually so cheerful, was pale with shock. Gregory, she stammered. I thought you knew. Evelyn asked me to sit with you. She said you weren't feeling well, that you were confused lately. Confused. That word hit me like a slap. I wasn't confused. I was being played. I looked at Marlene, my sister-in-law, the woman I had just spent 2 hours with, believing she was my wife, and she had let me believe it. Where is she, Marlene? I demanded, my voice low and shaking. Where is my wife? Marlene looked terrified. I don't know, Greg, I swear. She just called me this afternoon, frantic. She said she had an emergency. She begged me to come over and keep you company, to just pretend to be her if you got fuzzy. Fuzzy. They thought I was losing my mind. My wife, my real wife, Evelyn, wasn't at her book club. She wasn't at her pottery class. She was missing. My mind flashed back to Leo's words, the panic in his voice. I just saw Grandma. Shady Pines Motel. 7 guys. It was true. It had to be. I stumbled back inside and sat down hard on the hallway bench. I am Gregory Foster. I am 70 years old. I built Foster Holdings from the ground up, a $15 million construction empire that changed the skyline of this city. I raised a son, Brian, who I trusted with everything, who I made vice president. I loved a wife, Evelyn, for 45 years. And in the span of 5 minutes, I realized I was sitting in my own living room, a millionaire in the house I built, and I didn't know where my wife was. And my own family, my wife, my sister-in-law, were treating me like a doddering, senile old fool. The panic began to set in, cold and sharp. What kind of emergency was my wife in, and why in God's name was she at the Shady Pines motel? I stood there in the doorway, my hand still on the knob. The screen door swung shut with a soft thud. Marlene. Not Evelyn. Marlene. She got into her car, a silver sedan I didn't recognize, and drove off without looking back. I walked back inside. The house was suddenly terribly silent. The only sound was the ticking clock on the mantelpiece, the one Evelyn and I had bought in Vermont on our 25th anniversary. But that wasn't Evelyn, it was Marlene. I sank down onto the hallway bench, the oak wood cold beneath me. My hands were shaking. I had just spent 2 hours, maybe closer to 3, sitting in my own living room with Marlene. I had made her tea. I had complained about the property taxes. I had told her about Leo's ridiculous phone call. And the entire time, the entire 3 hours, I thought she was my wife. A cold dread, heavier and thicker than fog, settled over me. It wasn't just that she had lied. It was that I hadn't noticed. 45 years. 45 years I had woken up next to Evelyn. I knew the tiny scar on her left temple from when she fell off a bicycle in 1982. I knew the specific way she cleared her throat, almost a click, right before she was about to say something she was nervous about. Marlene didn't have that scar. Marlene's voice was a half-pitch higher. How had I missed it? Marlene's words echoed in my head, hitting me like tiny hammers. She said you weren't feeling well. That you were confused lately. Fuzzy. My God. Was this it? Was this the beginning of the fog? The great slipping away, the thing every man my age dreads but never speaks of. I tried to remember what I had for breakfast. Cereal. Yes, bran flakes. With blueberries. I remembered that. I knew my name. Gregory Foster. I knew the date. It was Tuesday. I wasn't fuzzy, but I had just mistaken my sister-in-law for my wife. This realization was terrifying. It shook me to my core. If I couldn't trust my own senses, my own memory of the woman I loved, who could I trust? Marlene had let me believe it. She had actively participated in the deception. And Evelyn. My Evelyn. She had orchestrated it. She had called her identical twin sister, told her to lie, to impersonate her, all because she had an emergency. What kind of emergency requires that level of deception? The fear I felt wasn't just about my mind slipping. It was the sudden, awful realization that I was alone. My wife and her sister, they were in on something together, something they were hiding from me. I pushed myself up from the bench. My legs felt weak, unsteady. Okay. One fact at a time, Greg. Fact 1. The woman who was just here was Marlene. Fact 2. Evelyn, my real wife, was not here. She was not at her book club. She was not at pottery. She was gone. Fact 3. Leo, my grandson, called and said he saw her at the Shady Pines motel. My mind instinctively recoiled from the implication. The Shady Pines. That place is a dump. It's off the highway, the kind of place where the neon sign has 3 letters burned out. The kind of place where people pay by the hour. Evelyn. My Evelyn with 7 men. It was ludicrous. It was impossible. But she wasn't here. And she had lied. She had set up an elaborate, cruel alibi using her identical twin sister. Why, I am Gregory Foster. I am 70 years old. I didn't inherit my money. I built it. Foster Holdings is my legacy. I started with one rusty dump truck and a $5,000 loan I barely qualified for. Today, it's a $15 million private construction firm. I gave my family everything: a beautiful home in the suburbs, a vacation house on the lake, college educations for our son Brian without a single dollar of debt. Brian, who is now the vice president of my company. I trusted him. And Evelyn. Evelyn was my partner for 45 years. She was the bedrock. She was the one who managed the books in the early days. She was the one who raised Brian while I worked 18-hour days. She was my life. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to be in our golden years. We were supposed to be taking that cruise to Alaska we talked about. We were supposed to be enjoying our grandson. But instead, I'm standing in my empty house realizing my wife is missing, and my grandson just spotted her at a no-tell motel. What kind of emergency happens at the Shady Pines, and why? Why 7 men? My mind went to dark places. Was she in trouble? Was she being blackmailed, kidnapped, or was it something else, something worse, something voluntary? No, I refused to believe that. Not Evelyn. She wouldn't. There had to be a logical explanation. But the lie, the setup with Marlene, that's what I couldn't get past. You don't deploy your identical twin sister and tell her to lie to your husband of 45 years unless you are desperate to hide the truth. Leo wasn't crazy, and I wasn't fuzzy. Something was terribly wrong. 3 hours. 3 hours that felt like 3 years. I paced the living room, walking from the fireplace to the bay window over and over. I looked at the photos on the mantel. Brian, our son, in his high school graduation cap. Leo, our grandson, just a baby, sitting on my shoulders at the lake house. And Evelyn and me, 20 years younger, smiling on a beach in Hawaii. I am not a detective. I am a builder. I build foundations. I build trust. And the foundation of my entire life felt like it was turning to sand right under my feet. At 5:17 p.m., the front door opened. It was her. My Evelyn. I knew it was her instantly. The familiar scent of lavender. The way she always kicked her left shoe off before her right. The little sigh she let out as she dropped her keys in the ceramic bowl on the hall table. She walked into the living room, pulling off her light spring coat. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped. "Greg," she said, seeing me standing there in the dimming light. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Are you all right? I thought you'd be watching the news." I didn't answer. I just watched her. She forced a little laugh, but her eyes darted around the room. "Greg, you're scaring me. Where were you, Evelyn?" Her smile froze. What do you mean I was out? I had things to do." "Marlene was here," I said. My voice was flat dead. Her face went pale. "Oh. She stopped by." "She stopped by for 3 hours, Evelyn. She sat in your chair. She let me call her your name. She lied to me for you. She said you had an emergency. She said you told her I was confused." Evelyn wouldn't meet my eyes. "So I'm asking you one time. The truth. Leo called. He said he saw you at the Shady Pines motel." Evelyn stared at me for a long, silent second. Then she did something I absolutely did not expect. She started to laugh. It wasn't a nervous giggle. It was a full, deep, throaty laugh. She put her hand on her chest as if she couldn't breathe. The Shady Pines?" she gasped. "Greg, that place is a dump, and—" "Wait, what was the other part? 7 men?" She burst out laughing again, harder this time, tears forming in her eyes. 7, why not 10, why not a dozen? Oh, Leo, that boy's imagination. I didn't laugh with her. He sounded terrified, Evelyn. He wasn't joking. Oh, honey, of course he wasn't joking, she said, finally catching her breath. He's 17. He saw something, and his teenage brain filled in the gaps with the most dramatic story possible. She sat down on the sofa, suddenly looking exhausted. Greg, look at me. I did. Her eyes were clear. I was not at the Shady Pines motel. I was not with 7 men, or 1 man, or any man. Do you hear me? Then where were you, I demanded, and why did you have Marlene lie to me? She sighed and rubbed her temples. I was at my pottery class. The advanced throwing class. It's every Tuesday afternoon. You know this. Your class ends at 3, I countered. You just got home. It's almost 5:30. Because I went to the grocery store afterward, she said, gesturing to the bag she'd left in the kitchen. And then I stopped at the dry cleaner. And then I got gas. I ran errands, Greg, like a normal person. And Marlene, I pressed. The emergency. This is where she looked away just for a second. I'm sorry about that. That was stupid. I shouldn't have done it. Why did you? Because, honestly. She looked back at me, her face pleading. I just needed some space. You've been a little clingy lately, following me from room to room, asking what I'm doing every 5 minutes. I felt a hot flash of shame. Had I been doing that? When I got out of pottery, I saw Leo had called. I knew he'd call you next with some crazy story. I knew you'd get worked up. I just didn't want to deal with an interrogation, Greg. I was tired. I wanted to run my errands in peace, so I called Marlene and asked her to run interference. I told her to tell you I was busy and she must have exaggerated and called it an emergency. I am sorry. It was a bad idea. But it wasn't that. That hung in the air between us. The affair. The betrayal. 7 men, Greg, she said, her voice softening, walking over to me. Think about it. It's insane. Leo probably saw someone who looks like me. Lord knows you just mistook Marlene for me. Maybe we all need to get our eyes checked. She put her hands on my arms. I was at pottery, then the grocery store. I promise. She seemed so logical, so reasonable, so normal, and I felt foolish. She stepped back, her expression changing from tired to genuinely hurt. Actually, I'm offended, Greg. Deeply. 45 years. We've been married for 45 years. And your first instinct, is to believe our grandson's wild story over me. It wasn't just Leo I defended, but my voice was weak. It was Marlene lying to my face. Marlene was trying to help me get 2 hours of peace, she shot back. But you jumped straight to the Shady Pines motel to 7 men. What kind of woman do you think I am after all this time? I had no answer for that. The woman I thought she was. Well, she was the woman I built my entire life with. I am Gregory Foster. I've run Foster Holdings for 40 years. I manage $15 million in assets. I handle multi-million-dollar contracts. I oversee 300 employees. I am not a stupid man, but in that moment, I felt like one. This was Evelyn. We got married in 1980, back when I had nothing but that one rusty dump truck and a pocket full of ambition. She was the one who believed in me when no one else did. She kept the books in a spiral notebook. She answered the phone in our tiny apartment. She raised our son Brian while I worked myself into the ground. She had never lied to me. Not about anything important. When I had to lay off half my crew during the 2008 recession, she was the one who held me while I cried, terrified we were going to lose everything. When Brian got his MBA, we were so proud. I made him vice president of the company. He was my heir, our legacy. And Leo was our joy, the son of our son. This was the family we built, solid, strong, like a foundation I'd poured myself. And I was accusing the matriarch of that family, my partner of 45 years, of, what a sordid, cheap afternoon rendezvous. It didn't make sense. Her explanation that she was tired, that I was being clingy, that Leo was mistaken, and that she made a bad call with Marlene was infinitely more believable. Evelyn, I started, my voice soft. No, she said, holding up a hand. I need to know. Do you really believe I would do that after everything we've been through? I looked at her. Her eyes were flashing with genuine anger. Her face was flushed. This wasn't an act. This was a woman who felt deeply wronged. And I was the one who had wronged her. I felt the shame creep up my neck. I was the fool. I was the one who couldn't tell two identical sisters apart. I was the one who let a 17-year-old's fantasy get into my head. I was being a doddering old man. I'm sorry, I said, and the words tasted like ash. Evie, I am so sorry. You're right. It was ridiculous of me. I haven't been myself lately. Her expression softened instantly. The anger drained away, replaced by concern. She came over and gave me a hug. It's okay, Greg, she murmured into my shoulder. I know it's been hard. We're getting older. Things get confusing. There was that word again. Confusing. I shouldn't have had Marlene lie. That was my fault. It was a stupid, silly thing to do, and it won't happen again. Okay. Okay, I said, hugging her back, feeling the familiar comfort of her. We stood there for a long time. She finally pulled away and went to the kitchen to put away the groceries, chattering about the ridiculous price of milk, about how Marlene was driving her crazy with wedding plans for her daughter. Everything was normal again. But as I sat back down in my armchair, I watched her. She was moving around the kitchen, her back to me. Everything was normal. So why did I still feel sick to my stomach? Why did my gut feeling, the one that had guided me through 40 years of tough business deals, scream at me that I had just swallowed the biggest lie of my life? I had apologized. I had accepted her story. But the seed of doubt was planted. And I suddenly desperately needed to know what really went on at that pottery class. I tried to let it go. I really did. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. 45 years. You do not throw away 45 years of trust because of one bizarre afternoon. So I said, okay. I kissed her goodnight. I went to bed. But I did not sleep. How could I? My mind kept replaying the scene. Leo's voice shaking. 7 guys. Marlene's face pale with shock. Confused, fuzzy, and Evelyn's laugh. That laugh. It was just a little too loud, a little too long, a little too practiced. I told myself I was being the paranoid old man she accused me of being, the clinging, doddering fool. The next few days I tried to act normal. I went to the office. I signed papers. I reviewed blueprints for the new downtown high-rise. I was Gregory Foster, the man in charge. But at home I was a spy. I started watching, really watching. And that is when I noticed the laptop. It was a new one, a sleek silver MacBook. I had not bought it. I assumed Brian had given it to her. Evelyn had always hated computers. She called them expensive paperweights. She was the one who still balanced her checkbook by hand with a pencil. She preferred her garden and her pottery to the digital world. But now that laptop was attached to her hip. It was like a new limb. She had it with her in the kitchen while she drank her coffee. She had it on the couch while she pretended to watch the evening news. And when I walked into the room, snap, she would close the lid instantly. "What are you doing, Evie?" I would ask, trying to sound casual. "Oh, just emailing the garden club," she would say, forcing a smile. "Or looking up a new recipe for that lasagna you like." But her fingers were always hovering over the keyboard, like she was afraid I would see what she was really doing. One night I woke up around 3 a.m. The bed beside me was empty. I felt that familiar cold dread creep back. I got up, my joints cracking in the silence, and walked downstairs. There she was. She was in the dark living room, illuminated only by the glow of the screen. She was sitting on the floor, leaning against the sofa, her back to me. She was typing. Fast. Furiously. I stood there in the shadows of the hallway and just watched her. I watched her for almost a full minute before I spoke. "Evelyn?" She jumped so hard, the laptop almost fell off her knees. She slammed the lid shut, her hand flying to her chest. "Greg, you scared the life out of me. What are you doing up?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said, walking into the room. "It's 3 in the morning." "I couldn't sleep," she said, her voice tight. "Just paying some bills online. You know, things." She was lying. I knew she was lying. Her face was tense, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. I let it go again. I went back to bed, but the image of her bathed in that cold blue light, typing secrets in the dark. It stayed with me. The tension in the house was getting thick. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm. Evelyn was jumpy. I was suspicious. We were polite. It was awful. Then 2 days later, our son Brian came over for dinner. Brian, my son, my successor. The 42-year-old vice president of Foster Holdings. The boy I had taught to read blueprints, the man I trusted with my legacy. Dinner was strained. Evelyn barely ate. Brian kept checking his phone under the table. "Everything all right, son?" I asked. "Yeah, Dad. Fine. Just work. You know, big project." He was lying too. The apple did not fall far from the tree. After dinner, I was in the study pretending to read the Wall Street Journal. Evelyn and Brian were in the kitchen cleaning up, or so I thought. I heard their voices. They were not cleaning. They were arguing. I put the paper down. I crept closer to the kitchen door, feeling like a thief in my own home. Their voices were hushed, but vibrating with anger. "I'm telling you, you can't keep doing this," Brian hissed. His voice was sharp, desperate. "I don't have a choice, Brian. What else am I supposed to do?" Evelyn shot back, her voice equally low and tense. "You have to stop. He's not stupid. He's asking questions. He's watching me." "He's watching you. He's watching me. He knows I lied about Marlene. I can feel him staring at my back every second I'm in the house." My breath caught in my throat. I leaned closer. Brian's voice was cold. "That was your mistake. You should have just stuck to the plan. But no, you had to get soft." "Get soft?" "Brian, he's your father. He's my husband. This is wrong. I can't keep lying to him like this." "You will keep lying," Brian said, and the menace in his tone made my blood run cold. It was not my son talking. It was a stranger. "We are too close now. You just need to hold it together for a little while longer." "But he's starting to suspect." "I know he is. That whole thing with Leo, it rattled him." "Then unrattle him," Brian snapped. "We have to be more careful. No more slip-ups. No more emergencies. Stick to the story. Stick to the plan. Do you understand me, Mom?" "Mom, this was not just my wife. This was my wife and my son. They were in this together. They were partners in a lie against me." I backed away from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break. The doubt was gone. The confusion was gone. My gut feeling had been right all along. The woman I loved and the son I had raised. They were conspiring against me. But why? What was the plan, and what did it have to do with me? Starting to suspect, I backed away from the kitchen door, my hand covering my mouth. I stumbled back into the darkness of my study and collapsed into my leather chair. I could not breathe. The sounds from the kitchen faded, replaced by the pounding of blood in my ears. "Stick to the plan," He's starting to suspect. It was not just Evelyn. It was Brian. Brian. My son. The boy I taught to ride a bicycle on this very street. The kid I took to construction sites on Saturday mornings, letting him wear a small yellow hard hat. The man I had proudly named Vice President of Foster Holdings. My legacy. I did not build that company for me. I built it for him. I built that $15 million empire so he would never have to struggle the way I did. I started with one rusty dump truck and a $5,000 loan. I gave him the world, and he was in my kitchen hissing at his mother. We have to be more careful. I thought back over the last year, all the times he had stopped by my office. Dad, don't worry about these contracts, I'll handle it. Dad, you look tired, why don't you take a long vacation? Dad, I can handle the quarterly reports, you just go play golf. I had seen it as a son's devotion, a son eager to take the burden off his aging father's shoulders. I was a fool, an absolute blind fool. He wasn't taking the burden. He was the burden. He and Evelyn, my wife, the two people on this planet I trusted without question, were a team. And I was the target. I was the obstacle. My own family, my wife, my son. What was this plan that was so important? What were they hiding that was so terrible, and why, dear God, why were they working together against me? I sat there in the dark for an hour. I heard the kitchen cleanup finish. I heard Brian's car start and drive away. I heard the soft footsteps of my wife climbing the stairs to our bedroom. The house was finally still. I waited. I counted to 500. Then I moved. I crept downstairs. The silver laptop was on the dining room table. She had been so jumpy about it, so protective. But the argument with Brian must have rattled her. She had forgotten it. My hands were shaking. I am not a man who snoops. I am a man who builds. I build on foundations of trust. But they had taken a sledgehammer to my foundation. I opened the lid. The screen lit up this dark room. It was asleep, not shut down. She hadn't logged out. My heart hammered against my ribs. I did not know what I was looking for. Bank statements, secret emails. I clicked on her document folder, and there it was. The name on the folder hit me like a physical blow. Plan B. Stick to the plan, Brian had said. This was it. I clicked it. A password box popped up. Enter password. Of course. She was not that careless. I felt a surge of white-hot frustration. I was locked out. I sat back defeated. But then I saw it. The icon for the internet browser. It was still open. Just one tab. I moved the mouse and clicked. The screen filled with her search history. I leaned in close, my eyes scanning the words. My blood turned to ice. It was not recipes for lasagna. It was not the garden club. Search. How to get medical power of attorney for elderly parent. Search. Early signs of onset dementia versus simple confusion. Search, what is legal guardianship versus conservatorship in Illinois? Search, process for involuntary committal for senior mental health. Search, how to handle a parent who is losing their mind. I stared at the words, my vision blurring. Losing their mind. Confused. Fuzzy. It all clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening snap. The Shady Pines incident. My confusion with Marlene. They were not afraid I was getting suspicious. They were counting on it. They were using my confusion. They were building a case. This was not just about hiding something. They were planning to have me declared legally insane. They were planning to lock me away. They were planning to take everything. My wife and my son. They were trying to erase me. I closed the laptop lid. The soft click echoed in the silent dining room. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my life, my 45-year marriage, my relationship with my only son breaking in two. Medical power of attorney. Involuntary committal. How to handle a parent who is losing their mind. These were not idle searches. This was not casual curiosity. This was research. This was a plan. A cold, calculated, predatory plan. My son Brian. My wife Evelyn. The two pillars of my entire existence. The people I would have died for without a second thought. And they were conspiring. Not just against me, but to erase me. They were laying the groundwork to have me declared legally incompetent. They were going to lock me up in some sterile white room, drug me until I really was fuzzy, and then they would take it all. Everything. The $15 million company I built from the dirt. The house I was standing in. The lake house I had built with my own hands. My money. My life. My dignity. I stood there in the dark, my hands gripping the back of the dining room chair. My knuckles were white. I was not confused. I was not senile. I was furious. A rage so pure and so cold, it burned away all the doubt, all the self-pity. They wanted me to be confused. They were using my grief, my age, my occasional normal forgetfulness. They were using the fact I mistook Marlene for Evelyn as a weapon. They were building a case against my sanity. And I realized with a terrifying finality that I was completely, utterly alone. I could not go to Brian. He was the architect of this betrayal. I could not go to Evelyn. She was his willing accomplice. She was the one who had lied to my face, the one who had let her own sister impersonate her, the one who had co-signed this execution. Who could I go to? My doctor? For all I knew, they had already been to him planting seeds, telling him I was slipping. My corporate lawyers, Brian, knew all of them. He was the vice president. He would charm them just as he had charmed me. No. I was a 70-year-old man, trapped inside my own life, and the hunters were my own blood. They thought I was weak. They thought I was finished. They called me a doddering old fool in their private jokes, I was sure of it. But I had one advantage. Just one. They thought I was a doddering old fool. They thought I was fuzzy. They did not know I had seen the laptop. They did not know I had seen the search history. They did not know that I knew about Plan B. I made a decision right there in the silence of my dark house. I would not confront them. I would not yell. I would not give them the satisfaction of knowing they had rattled me. No. I would play their game. I would become the confused, harmless old man they wanted me to be. And while I played the part of the fading patriarch, I would gather my own weapons. I would find my own truth. I would not be erased. I would not be committed. I am Gregory Foster. I built an empire from nothing. I did not get here by being stupid, and I would not let my life's work be stolen by the very people I built it for. I needed help. Not family. Not friends. I needed a professional. I needed someone who was loyal only to my checkbook. Someone who did not know Brian as my golden boy son or Evelyn as my devoted wife. I needed someone who saw only facts. I went back upstairs, moving silently. I went into my study and closed the door. In the back of my old roll-top desk, beneath a pile of expired passports and old tax returns, was my old address book. I flipped through the pages. H. Harrison. Mr. Harrison. He was a private investigator. A PI, the best in Chicago. I had used him almost 12 years ago for a delicate corporate matter. We suspected a senior executive of selling proprietary blueprints to a competitor. Harrison had handled it with surgical precision. He got the proof the man was fired, and it never hit the papers. He was discreet, thorough, and expensive, and he answered only to the person signing the check. I looked at the clock. It was 4:15 a.m. I did not care. I dialed his cell number. He picked up on the second ring, his voice wide awake, gravelly. Harrison? Mr. Harrison, this is Gregory Foster, from Foster Holdings. We worked together back in 2013. There was a pause. I remember you, Mr. Foster, the executive with the blueprints. This is a late call, or an early one. It's an urgent one, I said, keeping my voice low. I need your services again, but this is not corporate. This is personal, and it requires absolute total discretion. No one can know you are working for me. Not my company, not my family, no one. Personal is my specialty, Mr. Foster, he said. What's the situation? I took a deep breath. Saying it out loud made it real. I need you to investigate my wife, Evelyn Foster, and my son, Brian Foster. Harrison did not miss a beat. No surprise, no judgment. Go on. I have reason to believe they are conspiring against me. I think they are trying to gain control of my assets. I stopped realizing how it sounded. The classic paranoid fantasy of a rich old man. I know how that sounds, Harrison, I said quickly. I know I sound like a paranoid old fool. Mr. Foster, he interrupted, his voice calm. In my line of work, the paranoid old fools are right about 99% of the time. What are they doing? I told him everything. I told him about Leo's bizarre phone call, the Shady Pines motel, the 7 men. I told him about Evelyn's laugh, her excuse about the pottery class. I told him about Marlene, the identical twin, and the lie. I told him about the laptop, the secret Plan B folder, and I told him about the internet search history. Medical power of attorney, involuntary committal, dementia. Harrison was silent for a moment. They're building a narrative, he said finally. They're documenting your confusion. The incident with your sister-in-law, they'll use that. They'll twist Leo's call. They'll say you're having delusions. Exactly, I said, relieved that he saw it, that I was not crazy. They think I'm losing my mind, but I'm not. I need proof, Harrison. I need to know why. Why are they doing this? What is Evelyn hiding about that motel? What is Brian's role in this? What is Plan B? You need the truth, he said. I need the truth, I confirmed. I need leverage. I need to know what I'm fighting before they strike. All right, Harrison said. It's standard procedure. I'll put surveillance on both of them, full-time. GPS trackers on both their vehicles. I'll check their financials, see if there are any new bank accounts, any large withdrawals. And I'll find out exactly what happened at the Shady Pines motel. I have an associate who owes me a favor at the front desk there. How much? I asked. $20,000 retainer. I'll need it in cash by 9 a.m. I'll have it, I said without hesitation. Mr. Foster, one more thing. From now on, you are the confused, gentle old man. You are fuzzy. Do you understand? You do not confront them. You do not ask questions. You do not let them know you suspect anything. You are exactly the harmless fool they think you are. Let them get comfortable. Let them get sloppy. I can do that, I said, feeling the cold anger solidifying into a plan. Good, because sloppy people leave trails, and I am very, very good at following trails. I hung up the phone. I looked at the dark room at the laptop. They wanted a confused old man. Fine. That is exactly what they were going to get. Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice quiet in the pre-dawn stillness of my study, I need you to understand something. I am not a man who was given anything. Everything I have, I built. Foster Holdings. I gestured out the window toward the city that was still dark, a skyline I had helped to shape. I started with nothing. 40 years ago, I had one dump truck and a mountain of debt. My wife, Evelyn, she kept the books at our kitchen table. I poured concrete in the freezing cold. I worked 20-hour days. I missed birthdays. I missed anniversaries. I did all of that. For him. For Brian. I paused, the name tasting like poison in my mouth. He was my only son, Harrison. My legacy. I gave him the education I never had. I sent him to the best schools. I wanted him to be better than me. I wanted him to have the easy path I never had. I looked at Harrison. He was just listening, his face impassive. That is what I was paying him for. No judgment, just facts. When he graduated with his MBA, I was the proudest father in the world. I brought him into the company. I taught him everything. How to read a blueprint. How to negotiate a contract. How to manage a crew. I trusted him. I trusted him. I had to stop. The emotion was choking me. 2 years ago, I made him vice president. I gave him control of the daily operations, the financials, the contracts. I handed him the keys to my kingdom. I handed him my life's work. I was preparing to retire. I was ready to hand him the crown. I laughed a dry, bitter sound. And he and his mother, they were planning to declare me incompetent. I paced the room. I gave him everything. Access to every account. My trust. My name. And he used it. He used it to plot against me. All those times he told me, "Dad, you look tired. Let me handle this." I thought it was devotion. I thought it was a son taking care of his old man. I slammed my fist on the desk. It was condescension. It was a coup. He was treating me like a fool. He was stealing from me right under my nose, and I was thanking him for it. I looked at Harrison, feeling the hot shame. He thinks I'm senile. He thinks I'm fuzzy. And I acted the part. I was so busy being the proud father, so blinded by the legacy I thought I was building, that I could not see the snake in my own house. I was a fool, Harrison. A blind, trusting, stupid old fool. I am not that man anymore. Not after last night. They think I'm weak. They think I'm finished. They think I'm just some old man they can put in a home. They are about to find out how wrong they are. I did not build a $15 million company by being fuzzy. I built it by being smarter and tougher than everyone else in the room. And I am not going to lose it. Not to them. I need you to find out everything. I need to know why. I need to know what they are hiding. Because my son and my wife, they are about to learn what happens when you try to bury Gregory Foster. Harrison was fast. By noon that same day, he called me on a secure line, a burner phone he had messengered to my office. "It's done," he said. "Trackers are active on both vehicles. Your wife's SUV and your son's sedan. I have eyes on them 24/7. "How, to?" I asked. "My associate is a very good mechanic." He noticed Mrs. Foster's tire was low in the grocery store parking lot. He offered to fill it. Took 30 seconds. Your son's car was at the office. Easier. "Good," I said, feeling a strange mix of relief and disgust. I was bugging my own family. It felt dirty. But what choice did I have? They had already declared war. I was just arming myself. "Now," Harrison said, "we wait. But you need to give them space. They think you're fuzzy and suspicious. If you hang around watching them, they'll stay careful. You need to disappear." "What do you mean, disappear?" "You need to give them the freedom to make a mistake. Go away for a few days. Let them think the old man has forgotten his worries. Let them get comfortable. Let them get sloppy." He was right. If they thought I was watching, they would stick to their whispers. If they thought I was gone, Plan B might just go into motion. It was time to set my own trap. I went home that evening. I walked into the kitchen where Evelyn was. I put on the mask Harrison had told me to wear. The mask of the confused, harmless old man. "Evie," I said, forcing a weary sigh. "You know, you were right. I have been clingy. I'm sorry about that. I've just been feeling a little tired." She looked up from the sink, her eyes sharp, searching. I saw a flicker of, was it pity or satisfaction? "Oh, Greg," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You just need a break. We're all worried about you." I know, I said, shuffling my feet a little. "In fact, that's what I wanted to tell you. I think I'm going to go away for a few days. Just me." Her eyes lit up. I saw it. It was gone in an instant, but I saw it. "Go away?" she asked, trying to sound concerned. "Where are you sure you're all right to travel alone?" Just up to the lake," I stammered, playing the part. "The old cabin. I'll go fishing." "Yeah, fishing. Like the old days. Just 3 days. I'll leave Thursday morning. Come back Sunday night. The quiet will do me good." She rushed over and hugged me. "Oh, Greg, that is a wonderful idea. The best idea you've had in months. You deserve it." She was overjoyed. I could feel her practically vibrating with excitement. I had just handed them the opportunity they were waiting for. 3 whole days without the fuzzy old man around to get in their way. "I'll pack your bags for you," she offered a little too eagerly. "No," I said. "I can handle it." Thursday morning, I packed my fishing gear. I packed my oldest clothes. I kissed Evelyn goodbye on the cheek. She held me for a long time. "You just relax, honey," she whispered. "Don't you worry about a thing. Brian and we'll take care of everything here." I could feel the coldness in her embrace. "I know you will," I said. I got in my truck and drove north toward the lake. I drove for 1 hour just to be sure. Then I got off the highway, circled back, and drove downtown to the Ritz-Carlton. I checked into a corner suite on the 25th floor overlooking the city. I was not going fishing. I was going hunting. I turned on my laptop, the one Harrison had given me, and watched as the 2 GPS dots, one labeled Evelyn, the other labeled Brian, began to move across the map. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the rats to come out. The hotel suite was a gilded cage. 25th floor. I had a view of the entire city, the city I had helped build. But I was not looking at the skyline. I was staring at my laptop, at the 2 blue dots on the map. Evelyn's dot was at the grocery store. Then the bank. Then the dry cleaner. Normal. Brian's dot was at the office. Normal. I sat there for 2 days. I ordered room service I barely touched. I watched the dots. They did nothing unusual. I started to feel that familiar creeping shame. Had I lost my mind? Was I really paying a small fortune to watch my wife run errands? Was this whole thing, the laptop, the searches, just a massive misunderstanding? Was I the fuzzy old man after all? On Friday afternoon, the secure phone buzzed. It was Harrison. I snatched it up. "Tell me." "Mr. Foster. Greg, I have the preliminary report." His voice was flat, professional. "Just tell me, Harrison. Am I crazy?" There was a pause. "No, sir. You are not crazy. But this is complicated." My heart hammered. "The motel. The 7 men. Was she—" I could not say the word. "Cheating." "No," Harrison said, and the word was so definitive, so final, I almost collapsed. "No affair. Not in the way you're thinking. The Shady Pines Motel will get to that. But you need to know there is no other man. Your wife is not involved in a romantic infidelity." I sat down heavily on the edge of the king-sized bed. The relief was overwhelming. It washed over me so potent I felt weak. Thank God. Oh, thank God. She was not cheating. My Evelyn. My Evie. "So what is it?" I laughed, a broken, relieved sound. "What's this all about? She's just, I don't know, stressed." The silence on the other end of the line was long. Too long. "Harrison. You said there was no affair." "That's correct," he said, and the flatness in his voice returned, but this time it felt heavy. There is no affair, Mr. Foster. The truth is much, much worse. My relief evaporated. The cold dread rushed back in 10 times stronger. What do you mean worse? I ran the financials, Harrison said. Not just on your wife, but on your son, Brian. Brian, I said. What does Brian have to do with this? He's the vice president. He's... Mr. Foster, your son is in trouble. Deep, catastrophic trouble. I gripped the phone. What trouble? I accessed his private accounts, the ones he keeps separate from your company, and his joint account with his wife. He's been living a second life, Greg. A second life? What are you talking about? Brian has a gambling addiction, a severe one. The words did not make sense. Gambling. Brian, my Brian, the MBA, the perfect son. That's impossible, I said. He doesn't gamble. We go to Vegas sometimes for a corporate event. He plays a little blackjack. It's social. It's not social, Harrison said, his voice hard. It's online. Offshore sports betting sites. High-stakes virtual poker rooms. He's been wiring money to accounts in Costa Rica and Macau. We're talking massive amounts. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. No, I whispered. No, he wouldn't. He did. And he lost Greg. He lost big. He's been chasing his losses for over 5 years. He's leveraged everything. He took out secret loans. He forged your signature on at least 2 loan applications. I felt the air leave my lungs, forged my signature. But that's not the worst part, Harrison continued, his voice grim. When the banks cut him off, he went elsewhere. Elsewhere, loan sharks, an organized crime outfit operating out of the South Side. These are not nice people, Mr. Foster. These are the kind of people who don't care about credit scores. They care about kneecaps. My blood turned to ice. How much? I whispered. How much does he owe? As of this morning, the total is just over $2 million. $2 million. And he missed his last payment. I collapsed onto the bed. $2 million. To gangsters. That's... I could not speak. My mind was racing. Brian, my son, his distraction, his secretive phone calls, his argument with Evelyn. You have to stop. He's starting to suspect. We have to be more careful. It was not my suspicion they were worried about. It was the loan sharks. Oh my God, I said, the realization dawning. They're scared. They're not conspiring against me. They're terrified. They are in danger, Greg, Harrison said. Your son made a deal with the devil, and now the devil has come to collect. And Evelyn, she's involved in this. She's in the middle of it, Harrison said. She's been trying to clean up his mess. She's been trying to save him. Save him how? That's the other part of the financial report. Your wife, she's been moving her own money, a lot of it. My mind flashed back. It hit me like a physical punch to the gut. The money. Where did Brian get the money to lose in the first place? He got it from me. I thought about the last 5 years, the endless projects. Dad, I've got a fantastic investment opportunity. A small tech startup. Need $50,000 to get in on the ground floor. And I had written the check. Dad, the permitting on the new development is stalled. We need to grease the wheels with some consultants. Just $100,000. I'll handle it. And I had written the check. Dad, I'm facing a cash flow crunch on the Riverside project. Just a temporary loan. $200,000. Check, check, check. I had been his bank. I had been his mark. It was not investment. It was not greasing wheels. It was gambling debt. Every dollar I gave him he had thrown into a digital fire chasing a high. I had personally blindly funded my son's descent into hell. I thought he was ambitious. I thought he was my heir, my successor, driven just like I was. He was just an addict, and I was his enabler. Mr. Foster, are you still there? Harrison's voice pulled me back. I'm here. I managed to say, my voice thick. I gave him the money. All this time, I thought it was for the business. He's good at lying, Harrison said. Addicts are. But he's not just lying to you, Greg. Your wife, she's been lying too, but for a different reason. What do you mean? I asked. Your wife, Evelyn, you said she was acting strange. The laptop, the secrets. You were right. She's been hiding something. The affair, I said, but my voice was hollow. No, this. 6 weeks ago, Brian must have told her the truth. Or more likely, the loan sharks found her. They threatened her. They threatened Brian. My heart stopped. What did she do? I checked her personal accounts. The ones only in her name. The inheritance she got from her aunt. Her personal retirement savings. The money she kept separate all these years. What about it? It's gone, Harrison said. All of it. She liquidated everything. Stocks, bonds, CDs, everything. How much? Just over $500,000. $500,000. That was her money, her safety net. The money I told her to keep separate from me just in case. Where did it go, Harrison? She made a cash withdrawal 3 weeks ago, the full amount. She met 2 men in a parking garage in a bad part of town. My surveillance team got photos. It was a payoff, Greg. She was trying to buy them off. She was trying to save your son's life with her own. I saw it all clearly now. The lies, the secrets, the hushed argument. I can't keep doing this, she had cried at Brian. She was not talking about lying to me. She was talking about paying off gangsters, the laptop, the 3 a.m. searches. It was not plan B to commit me. It was her trying to find a way out. She was probably searching for bankruptcy lawyers. She was looking up. My mind went back to the start. But the motel, I stammered. The Shady Pines. Leo saw her, with 7 men. I heard Harrison sigh on the other end of the line. That's where she went after she realized the $500,000 was not enough. After she realized they would not stop. What was it? It's a meeting, Greg, a support group. A support group at that place. It's a chapter of Gam-Anon, Gamblers Anonymous, specifically a support group for the families of addicts. They meet there because it's cheap, it's anonymous, and no one would ever look for them there. It's discreet. And the 7 men? They were not all men, Harrison said. My associate checked the motel's security feed. It was a group of 8 people, 4 men, 4 women, all of them in their 60s and 70s. They looked broken. They were crying. They were hugging. They were parents, Greg. Just like you. Parents whose kids were in the same kind of trouble. My Evelyn. She was not a monster. She was not a cheater. She was a terrified mother bankrupted trying to save her son and collapsing in a support group at a cheap motel because she had no one else to turn to. And I had accused her. I had mistrusted her. The real villain, the real monster, was my son. Brian. My mind was reeling. $2 million. To loan sharks. But where did he get the seed money? Where did it all start? A man does not just wake up $2 million in debt. It starts small, and then I knew. It started with me. My stomach clenched. I thought back over the last 5 years. Back to all the conversations, all the opportunities. Dad, I've got a fantastic investment opportunity, he had said maybe 3-4 years ago. He was so excited, his eyes bright. It's a small tech startup. They're developing some new logistics software. I need $50,000 to get in on the ground floor. It's a sure thing. And I had written the check. I was so proud. I thought, he has the hunger. He sees the angles. Just like I did. Then maybe a year later. Dad, the permitting on the new downtown development is stalled. You know how City Hall is. We just need to grease the wheels with some private consultants. Just 100,000. I'll handle it discreetly. I did not even question it. I thought it was the cost of doing business. I thought he was learning to navigate the tough parts of the industry. I had written the check, and again, 6 months ago. Dad, I'm facing a cash flow crunch on the Riverside project. The subcontractors are demanding payment up front. Can the company float a temporary loan? 200,000. It's just moving money around. I had signed the transfer authorization without a second thought. It was not investment. It was not greasing wheels. It was not a cash flow crunch. It was gambling debt. Every single dollar. Every sure thing, every consultant, every project. It was all a lie. I had been his bank. I had been his mark. I had personally blindly funded my son's descent into hell. I was not just his father. I was his chief enabler. I thought he was ambitious. I thought he was my heir, my successor, driven just like I was when I started. But he was not driven. He was just an addict. And I, Gregory Foster, the man who built a $15 million company by scrutinizing every last cent, had been too blinded by fatherly pride to see the truth. He was not just lying to me. He was using my trust, my pride, my love as a weapon. He saw me coming, and I had just kept writing the checks. Mr. Foster, are you still there? Harrison's voice pulled me back from the dark spiral of my memories. I'm here, I managed to say, my voice thick. I gave him the money. All this time. I thought it was for the business. He's good at lying, Harrison said simply. Addicts are. They lie to everyone. They lie to themselves. But he's not just lying to you, Greg. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean, your wife, Evelyn? You said she was acting strange, the laptop, the secrets. You were right. She's been lying too, but for a different reason. The affair, I said, but my voice was hollow. I was wrong about Brian. Maybe I was wrong about that too. No, not an affair, Harrison repeated. This. 6 weeks ago, Brian must have told her the truth. Or more likely, the loan sharks found her. They must have bypassed him and gone straight to her. They threatened her. They threatened Brian. My heart stopped. They threatened her. That's when she started hiding things. That's when the laptop searches began. She was not plotting against you, Greg. She was desperate. She was trying to find a way out. She was trying to save him. Save him how? That's the other part of the financial report. Harrison said, his voice heavy. Your wife. She's been moving her own money. A lot of it. Her money? I asked, confused. I checked her personal accounts. The ones only in her name. The inheritance she got from her aunt in 2012. Her personal retirement savings. The money she kept separate all these years. A cold, sinking feeling filled my stomach. It was the money I had insisted she keep separate. Just in case, I had always told her. Just in case something happens to me or the company. It's your safety net. What about it, Harrison? I whispered. It's gone, he said. The word just hung there. Gone. All of it, Harrison continued. She liquidated everything. Stocks, bonds, CDs, her entire portfolio. How much? My voice was barely a whisper. $520,000. $500,000. That was her money, her independence, her future if something happened to me. Where did it go, Harrison? Where did the money go? She made a cash withdrawal 3 weeks ago, the full amount. She met 2 men in a parking garage in a bad part of town. My surveillance team got photos. It was a payoff, Greg. She was trying to buy them off. Harrison's words painted a horrifying picture. My wife Evelyn, 68 years old, meeting gangsters in a parking garage with a bag full of her life savings. She was trying to save your son's life, Harrison said. with her own. I saw it all clearly now. The lies, the secrets, the hushed argument. "I can't keep doing this, Mama," she had cried at Brian. She was not talking about lying to me. She was talking about paying off gangsters. The laptop, the 3 a.m. searches. It was not Plan B to commit me. It was her trying to find a way out. She was probably searching for bankruptcy lawyers. She was looking up. My mind went back to the start. The call that started this whole nightmare. "But the motel," I stammered. My voice was thick. "The Shady Pines. Leo saw her, with 7 men. I heard Harrison sigh on the other end of the line. It was a heavy, weary sound. "That's where she went after she realized the 500,000 was not enough," he said. "After she realized they would not stop. After she realized she was broken." "What was it?" I pleaded. "Harrison, just tell me." "It's a meeting, Greg. A support group." "A support group," I repeated the words, feeling foreign. "At that place, the Shady Pines." "It's a chapter of Gam-Anon," Harrison said. "Gamblers Anonymous. Specifically, a support group for the families of addicts. They meet there because it's cheap, it's anonymous, and no one from her social circle, no one from the country club would ever look for them there. It's discreet." I felt the last bit of air leave my lungs. "And the 7 men," I whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. "They were not all men," Harrison said. "My associate checked the motel's security feed from that afternoon. It was a group of 8 people, including your wife. 4 men, 4 women, all of them in their 60s and 70s. He paused and his voice softened. "They looked broken, Greg. They were standing outside the room afterward. They were crying. They were hugging each other. They were parents just like you, parents whose kids were in the exact same kind of trouble. They were the only people in the world she could talk to. My Evelyn. She was not a monster. She was not a cheater. She was a terrified mother, bankrupted trying to save her son, and collapsing in a support group at a cheap motel because she had no one else to turn to. And I had accused her. I had mistrusted her. I had set a trap for her. The real villain, the real monster, was my son. Brian." I hung up the phone with Harrison. The silence of the hotel suite was deafening. I looked out the window at the city I had helped build, but I did not see the skyscrapers. I saw my wife Evelyn in a dark parking garage handing her life savings to a man with a scarred face. I saw her sitting in a circle of broken strangers in a cheap motel room, crying. All this time, while I was spying on her, accusing her in my heart of being a cheat, she was living a nightmare. She had liquidated her entire life. $500,000. The money I had insisted she keep separate from me, her just-in-case fund. And just-in-case had arrived. It was our son. I felt a wave of guilt so strong I had to sit down. I had set traps for her. I had treated her like a criminal. But the anger was still there. It just had a new target. Brian and Evelyn. She still lied to me. She looked me right in the eyes and laughed about the 7 men. She let me believe I was the one who was crazy. She did not trust me. She chose to protect him, the addict who was destroying us, over me, her husband of 45 years. She chose to suffer alone. I packed my bag. The fishing gear in the corner felt like a joke. I checked out of the Ritz-Carlton, got in my truck, and drove home. I parked in the driveway. I grabbed my fishing rods from the truck bed. I put on the mask. The fuzzy, harmless old fisherman home from his trip. I walked inside. She was in the kitchen. She looked smaller, frail. "Greg," she said, forcing a bright smile. "You're back. Did you catch anything?" I looked at her, my heart breaking in two. I felt an ocean of pity for her, and I felt an ocean of rage. "No," I said, my voice hoarse. "Nothing was biting." She tried to keep the act going. "Oh, that's a shame, honey. Well, I'm making your favorite roast chicken. You must be exhausted from the drive." She bustled around the kitchen, wiping the counter, checking the oven. The perfect, loving wife. I could not do it. I could not play this game for one more second. Not now that I knew the truth. "I'm not hungry, Evie," I said. I walked past her into the dining room. I dropped my fishing bag on the floor with a heavy thud. "Greg," she said, her voice faltering. "What's wrong? You look pale. Was the drive too much?" "I didn't go fishing," I said. She froze. Her hand holding a wooden spoon stopped mid-air. What do you mean?" "I mean I didn't go to the lake. I've been in a hotel suite downtown for the past 3 days. At the Ritz-Carlton. I've been watching you." The color drained from her face. "Watching? Me, Greg, that's crazy." "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm fuzzy," I said, throwing her word back at her. "Because I'm confused. Because my grandson called with a wild story about the Shady Pines motel, and my wife laughed in my face and told me a lie about a pottery class." "I told you," she stammered, her hands starting to tremble. "I went to the store. I ran errands." "Stop," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor. "Just stop lying to me." I reached into my coat pocket. I pulled out the manila envelope Harrison had given me. "You weren't at pottery class," I said, "and you weren't at the Shady Pines for an affair." I tossed the first photo onto the polished dining room table. It slid across the wood and stopped right in front of her. It was a picture grainy taken from a distance. Her in her SUV in a dark parking garage. She was handing a heavy envelope to a man in a leather jacket. A man with a scarred face. A man who looked like he broke legs for a living. Evelyn let out a small gasp like she had been punched in the gut. "That was 3 weeks ago," I said, my voice cold. $520,000. Your entire retirement. Gone. To pay off a loan shark." Her eyes flew to mine, wide with terror. How did you?" "I told you. I've been watching." "Greg, you don't understand," she pleaded, tears welling up. "I had to. They threatened him. They threatened us. They threatened Brian," I corrected her. "Your son, our son, the son who has been gambling away my company, my money, and now your money. He's an addict, Greg. He's sick. He's a liar," I roared, the mask of the old man finally shattering. "And so are you. I was protecting you," she screamed back. "You were not protecting me," I yelled, slamming my fist on the table. "You were protecting him. You let me believe I was the one losing my mind. You had your own sister Marlene lie to my face. You made me feel senile." I, she stammered. "And this," I said, my voice dropping. "What about this? What about the 7 men?" I threw the second envelope onto the table. More photos. This time it was the Shady Pines motel. The grainy security footage Harrison had pulled. There she was, walking into room 12, and there they were, the other parents. The 4 men and 4 women looking just as broken as she did. A second photo showed her hugging another woman who was sobbing. Evelyn looked at the pictures and the fight just left her. She collapsed into a dining room chair. She put her head in her hands, and she began to sob. Not little tears. Gut-wrenching, agonizing sobs that tore through the silence of the house. "It was a support group," I said, my voice hollow. "Gam-anon, for parents of addicts." She looked up, her face a wreck of makeup and tears. "Yes," she whispered. "All this time," I said, the rage now mixing with a profound, terrible sadness. "All this time while I thought you were betraying me with another man. You were in hell. You were in hell and you didn't tell me." "I couldn't," she cried. "I was so ashamed. He's our son, Greg, our perfect boy. How could I tell you? How could I admit that our son, that Brian, was a monster?" She sat there just broken. The sobs were terrible. They were not the tears of a woman caught in a lie. They were the sounds of a woman who had been living in a private hell, a hell that had just been torn open for me to see. My anger, it was still there, a hot coal in my gut, but it was being drowned by this awful, immense pity. "How long, Evie?" I asked. My voice was quiet now. "How long have you known?" She tried to speak, but the words were choked by a sob. She held up her hand, her fingers trembling. 5, she whispered. 5 years. 5 years. He's been gambling for 5 years. She shook her head, wiping her face with her hands. No, it started small, in college. Just sports bets with his friends. Online poker. He told me it was just a game. He swore it was under control. But it wasn't, I said. It was not a question. When he started at the company, she continued, her voice gaining a desperate, rushing quality. When he had access to real money, his own salary, that's when it got bad. He was winning at first, or he said he was. He bought that new car. He took Rachel on that trip to Italy. I thought he was just successful, like you. I was so proud. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. I was so proud of him, Greg. He was our son, our perfect boy. And the money I gave him, I asked, my voice hard. The investments, the projects. That was later, she choked out. That was when he started losing. He came to me maybe 3 years ago. He said he had a cash flow problem. He said he made a bad stock trade. He needed $50,000 just to float him until his bonus. And you gave it to him, I said. He's my son, she cried. What was I supposed to do? I gave it to him, and I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. It was never the end. A few months later, it was something else. A consultant fee. Then a permitting issue. It was always something. And you knew, I said. You knew he was lying. I suspected, she admitted, looking down at her hands. But I didn't want to know. I couldn't. How could I? How could I admit to myself, to you, that our son, the vice president of Foster Holdings, was a gambling addict? How could I admit that he was lying to his own father? She stood up and started pacing, her hands twisting together. I was ashamed. Greg, the shame. Can you understand that I am Evelyn Foster? My husband is one of the most respected men in this city. We're the Fosters. We don't have problems like this. We don't have addicts. We don't have failure. So you covered for him, I said, the pieces clicking together. You kept the secret. I tried to fix it, she insisted. I told him he had to stop. I took him to a therapist. He promised he would stop. He swore it. He cried. He begged me not to tell you. He said you would hate him. He said you would fire him. He said you would disown him. He said it would kill you. She stopped pacing and looked at me, her face crumpled. And I believed him. I really believed it would kill you, Greg. Your pride, your legacy. Brian was all of it. So I kept the secret. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could love him enough to make him stop. But he didn't stop, I said. No, she whispered. He didn't stop. He just got better at hiding it. He started taking money from the company. I know, I said. The checks I signed. Her face went white. No, Greg, not just the checks you signed. It was worse. Worse how Evelyn, he figured out the accounting system. He was moving money. Small amounts at first. Fudging invoices. Padding expense reports. He was embezzling, Greg. The word, embezzling, from his own father. He stole from me. I said, the fact settling on me like a shroud. He stole from us, she corrected. And I kept finding out. I would see a discrepancy. I would confront him. He would break down, promise it was the last time that he needed to pay one last debt. And I would cover for him. I would move money from my own accounts to plug the holes. Before the auditors saw. Before you saw. My God, Evie, I whispered. I know, she shrieked. Do you think I don't know I was drowning? I was drowning in his lies, in his debts. And then it got worse. How could it possibly get worse? He ran out of company money he could take without you noticing, she said, her voice dropping to a terrified whisper. He ran out of my money, so he went to them. The loan sharks, the picture in the garage, the scarred man. They came to the house, Greg, she said, and she was shaking so hard she had to grab the back of a chair. They came here, one afternoon, when you were at the office. They just knocked on the door. Yes, 2 of them. They were polite. At first, they said Brian owed them $2 million. I laughed. I told them they were crazy. And then they showed me their proof. The forged loan documents. The pictures of Brian at their betting parlors, and then they showed me the other pictures. What other pictures? Pictures of Leo, she sobbed. Pictures of our grandson, playing in his schoolyard, getting off the school bus. They knew his schedule. They knew where he lived. They said if they didn't get their money, Brian's debt would be transferred. They said sometimes sons have accidents, sometimes grandsons do too. A cold, primal rage, a rage I had never felt in my 70 years, surged through me. And that, she said, pointing a trembling finger at the photo on the table. That was me handing over my entire life, my $520,000. It wasn't enough to clear the debt. It was just an interest payment. Just enough to buy us time. Just enough to keep them away from Leo. She finally collapsed. She just slid down the chair and onto the floor, a heap of profound, absolute despair. I didn't know what to do, she wailed from the floor. I had no money left. I couldn't tell you because they'd hurt Leo. I couldn't tell the police because they'd hurt Leo. I was trapped. I was so alone. So I went to the motel. I went to the meeting. It was the only place I could go where I could just cry. Where I could tell the truth to strangers. Because I couldn't tell my own husband. She looked up at me, her face destroyed. I'm sorry, Greg. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry for all of it. I was just trying to save our son and our grandson. I stared at her. She was a broken woman sobbing on my dining room floor, and I felt a wave of pity so strong it almost knocked me over. I almost reached down to help her up. Almost. But there was one piece, one final jagged piece of the puzzle that did not fit. The laptop. Evie, I said, and my voice was cold again. The pity evaporated. You're a terrified mother. You're a victim. I can see that. I can almost understand the lies, the secrecy, even the money. She looked up at me, hope in her tear-filled eyes. Greg, but there's one thing I don't understand, I said. The laptop, your laptop. I watched her. Her entire body went rigid. The color that was slowly returning to her face drained away completely. This was a new fear. A different, sharper fear. The laptop, she whispered. I saw it, Evie. The night Brian was here. The night you argued. You left it on the dining room table. I opened it. Greg, no, she breathed. You weren't supposed to. I saw the search history. I said, my voice like ice. Medical power of attorney. how to get legal guardianship for an elderly parent, involuntary committal for seniors, how to handle a parent who is losing their mind. I took a step toward her. You were handing over your life savings to gangsters, but you were also researching how to lock me up. Why was that the backup plan? If the money didn't work, you'd just declare me senile and take the rest. Was that what the fuzzy and confused talk was all about? Were you building a case? No, she shrieked, scrambling to her feet. No, Greg, not me. It wasn't me. Then who? I yelled. Who was researching how to put me in a home? Who typed those words into that machine? It was Brian, she cried, the name tearing out of her throat. It was his plan, not mine. That was plan B. I just stared at her. This was a twist I had never seen. What are you talking about? It wasn't my plan, she sobbed, grabbing the back of the chair to hold herself up. It was his. After I gave them the 500,000, they gave me 1 week. 1 week, Greg, to find the rest. The 1.5 million. She was shaking so hard she could barely speak. I went to Brian. I was broken. I told him, it's gone. All my money is gone. I have nothing else, and we have to tell your father. We have to go to the police. It's the only way. She paused, her eyes wide with the horror of the memory. And that, Greg, that is when my son, our son, he turned into a monster. He looked at me, Evelyn whispered. His own mother. And there was nothing in his eyes, just coldness. He told me, no, we are not telling him. We are not going to the police. I asked him, then what are we going to do? They're going to hurt Leo. And Brian said, no, they won't, because we're going to get them their money. We're going to get all the money. Evelyn's voice was barely audible. I didn't understand. I said, how I have nothing left. And he said, but he does, Mom. Dad does. He's sitting on $15 million, more than enough. I felt sick. I told him no. Evelyn continued, her voice cracking. I told him, we can't ask him, Brian, not after you've stolen from him. And he laughed at me, Greg. He said, we're not going to ask him, Mom. We're going to take it. This was it. The final terrible truth. He told me, he's old, he's confused, he's already fuzzy. He's already mistaking you for Aunt Marlene. He's halfway there already. He was going to use my real normal age-related confusion. The confusion he and his addiction had caused. He was going to use it as proof. He was going to find a crooked doctor. He was going to find a shark of a lawyer. He was going to stand up in a courtroom and say, my poor father, Gregory Foster. He's losing his mind. He's a danger to himself. Look, he can't even tell his wife from her sister. He was going to use my own grandson's phone call. I said the words tasting like acid. The shady pines. He'd say I was having delusions. Evelyn nodded miserably. Yes, he said it was perfect. He said Leo's call was a gift. It was proof that you were paranoid. He was going to have me declared incompetent. He would gain legal guardianship. He would control the entire $15 million estate. He would pay off his loan sharks, and he and his wife Rachel would keep the rest. And you, I said, my voice hardening again. You were researching it. You were helping him. No, she screamed, lunging forward and grabbing my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. Greg, no. I was researching it because I was terrified. I was trying to find out what he was doing. I was trying to find a way to stop him. I told him it was monstrous. I told him he was insane. I told him I would tell you. And what did he say? I whispered. Evelyn's face crumpled. She could barely speak. He looked at me, and he said, she took a ragged, sobbing breath. He said, if you say one word to him, Mom, just one word, I'll tell the judge you're just as fuzzy as he is. My blood ran cold. I'll tell them you've been covering for my addiction. I'll tell them you were the one who gave me the money that you met the loan sharks. I'll tell them the stress has broken your mind too. He threatened me, Greg, she whispered, her voice finally breaking. He said, you have a choice. You can be quiet and live comfortably in a big house, or you can speak up, and I will have both of you put in a state-run nursing home to rot together. He was going to lock us both up, his own parents. I just stood there. I looked at this woman, my wife Evelyn. She was a total stranger. She had lied to me. She had bankrupted herself. She had covered for him. But the woman she was describing, the woman threatened by her own son, she was not a villain. She was a victim. Just like me. She was still crying, whispering. He said, to rot together, Greg, to rot. I finally moved. I walked over to the dining room chair and sat down. I did not help her up. Not yet. I was still too raw. He's going to lock us both up, I said. It was not a question. It was a fact. Evelyn nodded miserably from the floor. He said he already talked to a lawyer and a doctor, someone who would vouch for our decline. This was it. The absolute bottom. My son, my heir, was not just an addict. He was not just a thief. He was evil. He was willing to destroy his mother and his father, to throw us into a snake pit, just to pay off his debts and get rich. The rage I felt for Brian was so pure, so absolute, it eclipsed everything else. It burned away my anger at Evelyn. Yes, she had lied. Yes, she had deceived me. But I looked at her, this terrified, broken 68-year-old woman, and I understood why. She was a mother trying to save her child, and when that failed, she was a hostage trying to save her grandson and herself. I finally let out a long, slow breath. Get up, Evie, I said. My voice was quiet, but it was hard. She looked at me, surprised. What? Get off the floor. We're not doing this. We're not going to rot together. She slowly pulled herself up, using the chair for support. Greg, what are we going to do? He controls everything. He knows the accounts. He knows the lawyers. He thinks he knows everything, I said. I walked over to her. The anger I felt at her lies was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard alliance. The two of us. Against him. He's gone too far, Evie, I said. He's not just a sick kid anymore. He's a criminal. He threatened you. He threatened Leo. And he threatened me. But he's our son, she whispered, the old excuse. No, I said, looking her straight in the eyes. Our son is gone. That thing in the kitchen, that thing that threatened to lock you in a home that is not our son, that is a monster wearing his face. And you and I, we are going to stop him. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. She was looking for the fuzzy old man. He was gone. How? She whispered. How, Greg? He's too smart. He's ruthless. He is, I agreed. But he has one weakness. The one weakness I've been feeding for 40 years. What? His ego, I said, and his greed. I felt a new plan forming. A cold, hard, terrible plan. He thinks I'm a confused old man, I said. He thinks you're a terrified victim he can control. He thinks we're weak. He thinks he's already won. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. We're going to let him keep thinking that. In fact, we're going to help him. Greg, no, she said, her voice rising in panic. Yes, I said. He wants an old man who is losing his mind. He wants me to be fuzzy fine. I'm about to give him the performance of a lifetime. Evelyn was pale. What do you mean? What are you going to do? He wants the money, I said. He threatened to have me committed to get the money, so I'm going to give him the money. Greg. Have you lost your mind? She cried. No, I said. I'm going to offer it to him. I'm going to dangle the bait right in front of his face, and he's so arrogant, so convinced I'm a senile fool he won't be able to resist. I went to my study. I told her to stay in the kitchen. If he calls or if you talk to him, you are exactly what he expects. A terrified, broken woman. You cry. You beg. You do not let him know we are together on this. Do you understand? She nodded, wiping her eyes. The terror was replaced by a tiny spark of something else. Resolve. I picked up my phone. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. I dialed his number. My son. He picked up on the third ring, his voice wary, suspicious. Dad. It's late. Is everything okay? He was probably wondering if his mother had confessed. Brian, I said. I pitched my voice down. I made it tremble. I put a whine in it that I despised. Brian, I don't feel so good, son. Dad. What's wrong? Are you okay? His voice changed. It was not concern. It was interest. He smelled blood in the water. I had a long talk with your mother, I stammered. She told me some things. About the money. The debts. There was a sharp intake of breath on his end. What, Dad, Mom, she's very emotional right now. You shouldn't. No, son, I interrupted, letting my voice crack. No, she's right. It's all too much. All this money, the company, I can't keep track of it all anymore, Brian. I can't. I let the silence hang there. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Dad, he said, his voice now like smooth honey, like a predator calming its prey. It's okay. It's not your job to keep track of it. That's my job. I've told you that. I know, I whispered. I know. You're a good son, a good boy. You always were. I felt sick saying it. Dad, what did she tell you? He pressed. Just that you're in trouble, that you need help. And I'm tired, Brian. I'm so tired. I think you were right. Right about what, Dad? He asked, his voice eager. About me needing to rest, I said. About me stepping back. I'm just an old man. I can't handle this pressure. The numbers, they get fuzzy. I used the word. I threw the bait. He was silent for a beat. He was processing. He was winning. Dad, it's okay, he said, his voice overflowing with false compassion. We all get tired. You've earned your rest. You've done enough. I want to help you, son, I said. The debts. I'll pay them. But I don't want to just hand over cash. I want it to be smart, like you taught me. What are you thinking, Dad? A trust? I said, pretending the word was difficult. Yeah, a family trust. I was thinking maybe $5 million. We could move $5 million into a trust. You could manage it. You could pay the debts from that. You could, handle it. Just like you said. It was the jackpot. I had not just offered him the $2 million he needed. I had offered him 5. He could pay his debts and still have $3 million left over to steal. I hated this. I hated this more than anything I have ever done. I am Gregory Foster. I built an empire by being the sharpest, toughest man in every room. And now to save that empire, to save my wife, to save myself, I had to become the weakest. I had to become the fuzzy old dad my son believed me to be. I had to take his insult, his ultimate betrayal, and wear it like a costume. It felt filthy. It felt like rolling in mud. To look at my own son, the boy I raised, the man I had given everything to, and pretend to be incompetent, it was the hardest thing I had ever done. But then I thought about his words. He's halfway there already. He's getting fuzzy. He wanted me to be senile. He was rooting for my mind to fail. He was looking for any sign of weakness. Fine. I would give him a sign. He was using my age against me. I would use it right back. He wanted proof. He wanted evidence that I was losing it. I would give it to him. I would use the one real piece of confusion I'd had. The Marlene incident. The moment I could not tell my own wife from her sister. That was my ace. I would feed his narrative. I would make him believe I was so far gone that I was desperate. I would make him believe he was in complete control. When a man is that arrogant, when he is that greedy, he does not look for traps. He sees only what he wants to see. And Brian wanted to see a confused, tired, defeated old man. He was about to get the performance of his life. I heard a small gasp on the other end of the line. He could not speak. He was stunned by his good fortune. "Dad," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. Fake emotion. "Dad, that is an amazing idea. That is so responsible and generous." "Is it?" I asked. I played the confused child. "Is that a good idea? I'm just so tired." "It's the best idea, Dad. It protects the money. It lets me handle the problem. It's perfect." "Oh. Good," I said, letting out a long, shaky sigh. I just don't know how. The papers. The lawyers. It's all so complicated." "Don't you worry about a thing," he said. I could hear the smile in his voice. The victorious, predatory smile. "Don't you worry at all. I have a lawyer, Dad. A personal one. He specializes in this. In estate planning." My blood ran cold. He had one ready. This was not a new thought. Plan B was already loaded. "And I know a doctor too. A specialist." He continued, his voice smooth as oil. He can come and talk to you. Just to make sure you're okay. To assess your fatigue." There it was. The doctor. The lawyer. The pieces of his vile plan. He was not just taking the bait. He was swallowing the entire rod, hook, line, and sinker. "Oh," I said. I injected a note of fear into my voice. "A doctor, I don't know, Brian. I feel fine. Just tired." "Just a formality, Dad," he said quickly. Too quickly. "For the trust. To make sure everything is legal and official. To show that you're of sound mind when you sign. It protects you." The irony was so thick I almost choked. He was going to use a fake doctor to prove I was of sound mind, to sign away my assets, so that later when the real doctors came he would already have legal control. It was brilliant. It was monstrous. "It protects me," I repeated as if trying to understand the concept. "Exactly. It's just a simple assessment, Dad. He'll ask you a few questions. It's nothing." "Okay, son," I whispered. "Okay. If you think that's best. You just tell me what to do. I trust you." "I will, Dad," he said. "I'll handle everything. I'll set it all up." "When?" I asked. "Soon. I'll get them both lined up. How about Friday afternoon?" "Friday," I said. "Okay, but not at the house. I don't want to. Can we do it at the office? It feels more official." There was a pause. He was thinking. The office was his turf now. He was the vice president. I was the old man who barely came in. It was perfect for him. "That's a great idea, Dad," he said. "The office is perfect. How about after hours, say 6 p.m.? It will be nice and quiet. No one to bother us." 6 p.m., I repeated. "Okay, nice and quiet. We'll get it all done," he said, his voice triumphant. "You, me, Mom. We'll bring the lawyer. We'll bring the doctor. We'll sign the papers, and then you can rest. For good. For good. The words sent a chill down my spine. Okay, Brian, I said. Friday. That sounds good. Thank you, son. Thank you for taking care of your fuzzy old dad. Anytime, Dad, he said. That's what I'm here for. I hung up the phone. I looked at Evelyn, who was standing in the doorway, her face as white as a sheet. He's coming? I said. Friday, 6 p.m. He's bringing his doctor and his lawyer. Greg, she whispered, her hands clasped to her mouth. He's going to do it. He's really going to do it. Yes, I said. The cold rage settled deep in my bones, hard as steel. He is. And we are going to be ready for him. Friday, 6 p.m. The offices of Foster Holdings were silent. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows across the expensive carpet I had picked out 5 years ago. The cleaning crews had already made their rounds. The building was silent. Evelyn's hand was trembling as we got off the elevator on the penthouse floor. I reached over and squeezed it. Her hand was ice cold. It's okay, Evie, I whispered. I had to keep my voice low just in case they were already there. Just follow my lead. You're the terrified wife. You're worried about your husband. That's all. You just sit there and look sad. She nodded, taking a deep, shuddering breath. Greg, I'm so scared. I know, I said. So am I. But we're doing this. We're ending this. Tonight. Tucked into the lining of my blazer, small and cold against my chest, was a digital audio recorder. Harrison had insisted. Get it on tape, Greg. Get them offering the deal. Get the doctor's assessment. Get the lawyer's pitch. Evelyn had one in her purse also running. Redundancy, Harrison had called it. We were not just walking into this. We were walking in armed. We walked down the corridor to the main conference room. The lights were on. I could hear the low murmur of voices inside. I paused at the door, took a breath, and let my shoulders slump. I practiced the fuzzy look. I pushed the door open. They were all there, waiting. It was like walking into a nest of vultures. Brian, my son. He stood up immediately, that sickening, compassionate smile plastered on his face. He looked concerned. The performance was nauseating. His wife Rachel was next to him, was clutching a leather briefcase. She looked nervous but also greedy. Her eyes were practically glittering. She had never liked me, but now she was looking at me like I was a winning lottery ticket. And then there were the other two. One was a man in an expensive, slightly shiny suit. He had slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. This had to be the lawyer. The other man was older, in his late 60s, with a gray beard and a tweed jacket. He held a leather satchel and had a kind, grandfatherly look. This, I knew, was the doctor, the man who was going to steal my mind. Dad, Brian said, rushing over to help me. I made sure to shuffle my feet a little, as if the walk from the elevator had exhausted me. I leaned on him, letting him guide me. Oh, Brian, I said, my voice shaky. Thank you for setting this up. It's a lot. My head is, it's just so... Shh, Dad, he said, patting my arm. It's okay. You're doing the right thing. This is to protect you. He guided me to the head of the table, the seat I had sat in for 40 years. My seat. He was seating me there to take it all away. And Mom, you're here too. Good, Brian said, turning to Evelyn. Evelyn just nodded, her eyes wide with fear, clutching her purse to her chest, the purse with the recorder. She was a better actress than I thought. She looked terrified. Let's make some introductions, Brian said, taking control. Dad, Mom, this is Mr. Davies. He's my personal attorney. He specializes in estate planning. He drafted the trust documents for us. The shiny suit, Mr. Davies, nodded. Mr. Foster, a pleasure. We're just here to simplify things for you. And this, Brian said, gesturing to the grandfatherly man, this is Dr. Miles. He's a specialist in cognitive health. He's just here as a formality, to validate the signing. Validate? I asked, my voice trembling. I don't. Dr. Miles stepped forward. His voice was soft, calming, like a snake charmer. Gregory, he said, sitting down across from me. May I call you Gregory? I am not here to test you. I am just here to have a conversation, to make sure you understand the wonderful, responsible step you're taking for your family. This is just a simple assessment. It's nothing to worry about. I looked at Evelyn. I looked at Brian. They were smiling, encouraging. The trap was set. The vultures were seated at the table. Okay, I whispered. Okay, doctor. If Brian says it's okay. I leaned back in my chair. I let my shoulders slump. I made my eyes look vacant, fuzzy. Performance of my life, I thought. Showtime. Dr. Miles opened his leather satchel. He did not take out a stethoscope. He took out a clipboard and a pen. Gregory, he said, his voice a gentle, condescending purr. I just want to get a baseline. This is all very standard. Nothing to be afraid of. Can you tell me your full name? I squinted. I looked around the room as if I was lost. My name? Yes, your name, the doctor said, smiling patiently. It's Greg, I said. Gregory Foster. Yes, Gregory Foster. I nodded as if proud of myself for remembering. Brian smiled at the doctor. See what I'm dealing with kind of look. I wanted to hit him. Wonderful, Dr. Miles said, making a note. And Gregory, do you know where we are right now? I looked around the conference room. My conference room. The room where I had closed billion-dollar deals. The room where I had built my life. We're at the bank, right? I said. I came to sign something for Brian, the bank. Rachel, my daughter-in-law, let out a tiny, sharp sigh. She was probably already spending the $5 million in her head. No, Dad, Brian said, his voice layered with fake patience. We're not at the bank. We're at the office. Your office. Remember Foster Holdings? Oh, I said. Oh yes, the office. Of course, it's so dark in here. Why is it so late? It's Tuesday, isn't it? I have my meeting on Tuesday. It's Friday, Dad, Brian said. It's Friday at 6 p.m. Friday. I looked at Evelyn, my eyes wide with fake panic. Evie, it's Friday. But I thought we were going to the lake. I packed my fishing gear. Evelyn played her part perfectly. She reached across the table and patted my hand. It's okay, honey. We changed the plan. Remember, we're doing this important thing for Brian. Right, I said. The trust, the money. Dr. Miles smiled at Brian. Thank you. That's very helpful. He turned back to me. Gregory, I'm going to give you 3 simple words. I want you to remember them. Can you do that for me? The words are apple, table, penny. He said them slowly. Apple, table, penny. Can you repeat those? I frowned. Apple, chair, no. Apple, table, penny. Yes, penny. Very good, he said, making another note. Now, I'm going to ask you a few simple math questions. If you have $10 and you buy a loaf of bread for $3, how much change do you get back? I stared at him. I, Gregory Foster, who could calculate profit margins on a multi-million-dollar project in my head. 10-3, I mumbled. I looked down at my fingers as if I was trying to count. Dad, Brian said, exasperated. 10 minus 3. It's 7. Oh, 7, I said, looking up startled. Yes, 7. That's right, isn't it, Seven? Dr. Miles just smiled his grandfatherly snake-like smile. That's right, Gregory. Now, what was the day of the week I just told you? I blinked. The day, I don't remember. It's Friday, Dad, Brian sighed. And what were those 3 words I asked you to remember? The doctor asked. I stared at him, blankly. This was the easiest part of the act. Words, I asked. I'm sorry, doctor. I, I'm just so tired. My head it's just so fuzzy. Dr. Miles put his pen down. He looked at Brian and Rachel with a grave, serious expression. Well, he said in a low, somber tone, it's clear there is significant cognitive impairment. Short-term memory loss, confusion about time and place, difficulty with simple calculations. I had to stop myself from laughing. Doctor, Brian said, leaning in, do you believe he is competent to make his own financial decisions? Dr. Miles shook his head slowly. Frankly, no. Based on this assessment, I would say Mr. Foster is in a highly suggestible state. He is not capable of managing complex financial matters. He is a clear candidate for needing assistance. A legal guardianship would be highly appropriate to protect him from himself and from others who might take advantage. Thank you, Doctor, Brian said. He sounded so relieved, so victorious. He turned to me. Dad, did you hear that the doctor agrees? This trust, it's the right thing to do. It's to protect you, so no one can take advantage of you. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, slid a thick stack of papers across the table. Here we are, Gregory, he said. This is just the document we discussed. It assigns Brian as your sole trustee. It gives him assistance in managing your portfolio. I looked at the document. Evelyn leaned in as if to help me. I saw the title. Emergency Petition for Involuntary Conservatorship. It was not a trust. It was the kill shot. The document that would strip me of everything. It's so many pages, I whimpered. My eyes are tired, Brian. It's okay, Dad, Brian said. He took a pen from his pocket and held it out to me. You don't need to read it. I've read it. It's all standard. It's just protection. Just sign here at the bottom, and it will all be over. You can finally rest. I looked at the pen. I looked at my son's smiling, eager, predatory face. He was handing me the weapon to end my own life. I reached out my hand. It was shaking. But it was not from confusion. It was from a rage so cold, so deep, I thought it would freeze the room. I took the pen. Dr. Miles put his pen down. He looked at Brian and Rachel with a grave, serious expression. Well, he said in a low, somber tone, it's clear there is significant cognitive impairment. Short-term memory loss, confusion about time and place, difficulty with simple calculations. I had to stop myself from laughing. Doctor, Brian said, leaning in, do you believe he is competent to make his own financial decisions? Dr. Miles shook his head slowly. Frankly, no. Based on this assessment, I would say Mr. Foster is in a highly suggestible state. He is not capable of managing complex financial matters. He is a clear candidate for needing assistance. A legal guardianship would be highly appropriate to protect him from himself and from others who might take advantage. Thank you, Doctor, Brian said. He sounded so relieved, so victorious. He turned to me. Dad, did you hear that the doctor agrees? This trust, it's the right thing to do. It's to protect you, so no one can take advantage of you. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke. He tapped the thick stack of papers in front of him. Here we are, Gregory, he said, his voice smooth and oily. He slid the papers across the polished mahogany table. They stopped right in front of me. This is just the document we discussed, the family trust. It assigns Brian as your sole trustee. It gives him assistance in managing your portfolio. I stared at the stack. It was at least 50 pages. It's so many pages, I whimpered. My eyes are tired, Brian. It's okay, Dad, Brian said. His voice was soft, almost hypnotic. He was so close to the finish line he could taste it. He took a heavy, expensive-looking pen from his suit pocket. He uncapped it and held it out to me. You don't need to write it, he said. I've read it. It's all standard. It's just protection. Just sign here at the bottom, on the last page, and it will all be over. You can finally rest. I looked at the pen. I looked at my son's smiling, eager, predatory face. He was handing me the weapon to end my own life. I reached out my hand. It was shaking. But it was not from confusion. It was from a rage so cold, so deep, I thought it would freeze the room. I took the pen. I held it over the document. I squinted, playing the part of the confused old man one last time. Here, Dad, I mumbled. On this line. That's right, the lawyer said, pointing. Right there. I lowered the pen, and I looked at the title. The bold print at the very top of the cover page. My blood ran cold. It did not say Foster Family Trust. It did not say $5 million trust. The words were sharp, legal, final, emergency petition for involuntary conservatorship, and underneath full transfer of all assets and medical power of attorney. I stared at the words, involuntary conservatorship. This was not a trust. This was not a $5 million fund to help him. This was the kill shot. This was the document that would strip me of everything, my company, my house, my bank accounts, my legacy, my right to decide what I eat for breakfast, my right to see my own grandson. This was Plan B. They were not even subtle about it. They did not even try to give me a real trust document to sign. They thought I was so far gone, so fuzzy, so senile, that I would not even read the title of the document I was signing. They thought I was a breathing corpse, a walking wallet ready to be emptied. A cold, clarifying calm washed over me. The rage did not disappear. It focused. It turned into a sharp steel point. I looked at Brian, my son. He was watching me. His eyes were not compassionate. They were greedy. He was watching my hand, watching the pen, willing it to move to sign away my entire life. He was not just an addict. He was not just a thief. He was a patricide waiting to happen. I looked at Evelyn. She was playing her part, looking down at her hands, the picture of a terrified, worried wife. I looked at Rachel, my daughter-in-law. She was already mentally redecorating my house. Just sign it, Dad. Brian urged, his voice a little tighter now. Then we can all go home. I looked down at the paper, at the line waiting for my name, the line that would end Gregory Foster. I gripped the pen, and I smiled. I held it over the signature line of the involuntary conservatorship petition. I looked at Brian. He was leaning forward, his eyes fixed on the tip of that pen. He was practically vibrating with anticipation. He was just moments away from stealing $15 million, from stealing my life. Just sign it, Dad. He urged, his voice a soft, poisonous whisper. Then you can finally rest. For good. I looked at Rachel. She was smiling. A tight, greedy, triumphant smile. I looked at the fake doctor and the fake lawyer the two hired guns brought in to perform this execution. And then, I smiled. It was not the vacant smile of a fuzzy old man. It was the smile of a man who had built an empire. It was the smile of a man who had just won. The room changed. The energy shifted. Brian's smile faltered. He saw it. He knew something was wrong. Dad, he asked. What's wrong? Just sign the paper. I set the pen down gently on the polished table. You know, Brian, I said. My voice was different. It was not the trembling, high-pitched whine of the old man I had been playing. It was my voice, the voice of Gregory Foster, the voice that had commanded boardrooms for 40 years. It was low, it was clear, and it was cold as steel. They all froze. Evelyn, my wife, looked up, her eyes wide. Brian went pale. Dad, what are you doing? I'm just admiring your work, son, I said. It's quite a document. Involuntary conservatorship. Such strong final words. But I think you're missing a few signatures. What? What are you talking about? The fake lawyer Davies stammered. The document only requires your signature, Mr. Foster. Oh, I know this document does, I said, tapping the petition. But for a production this elaborate, I think we need a few more witnesses in the room, don't you? Greg, what is this, Brian demanded, his voice rising in panic. This, Brian, I said, is the part where the play ends. Right on cue, the conference room door swung open. It did not open quietly. It hit the wall with a loud echoing bang that shattered the silence of the empty office floor. In walked Mr. Harrison, my private investigator. He was 6'3", built like a linebacker, and he was not smiling. Behind him, 2 uniformed Chicago police officers. Their hands were resting on their belts. And behind them, looking terrified but resolute, was Marlene. Evelyn's identical twin sister. The blood drained from Brian's face. Rachel let out a small, strangled gasp, a sound like a dying animal. The doctor and the lawyer looked at the police officers. Their professional masks evaporated. They were just 2 cheap crooks in expensive suits, and they knew in that instant that the jig was up. Mr. Davies, the lawyer, immediately started gathering his papers. Nobody moves, one of the officers said. His voice was calm, but it filled the room with absolute authority. Davies froze his hands halfway to his briefcase. I stood up. I was not the shuffling, weak old man anymore. I stood up straight to my full height. I felt 70 years old, but I also felt 30 years old. I felt powerful. I looked directly at my son. You thought I was losing my mind, didn't you, Brian? I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. You thought I was fuzzy. You thought I was senile. You thought your old dad was just a doddering fool halfway to the grave. Brian was speechless. He was shaking. You were right about one thing, I said, pointing a finger at Marlene, who was standing by the door. I was confused. I was so confused, in fact, that the other day I mistook my sister-in-law Marlene for my own wife. I really did. I saw Brian's eyes flicker. He was trying to process this. But that's where my confusion ends, son, I said, my voice dropping. Because I might mistake one identical twin for another when I'm tired. But I do not mistake love for betrayal. I do not confuse a worried family with a nest of vultures. And I never confuse my son with a criminal. What is this? Brian whispered, staring at the police. This is insane. He's the one who's crazy. Tell them, doctor, he's incompetent. Ah, the doctor, I said. Mr. Harrison stepped forward. He was holding a thick, heavy file. He dropped it onto the mahogany table. It landed with a thud that echoed like a gunshot. This, Harrison said, his voice booming in the quiet room, is a copy of your $2 million gambling debt to the Costello crime family, along with the wire transfer records from the offshore accounts you've been using. Brian looked like he had been shot. Harrison dropped a second, thinner file on top of the first. This is the forensic analysis of your father's forged signature on 3 separate corporate loans you took out from Foster Holdings. Loans you used to cover your losses. No, Brian whispered. And this, Harrison said, dropping a third file, is the background check on Dr. Miles here. Real name Arthur Finch. He lost his medical license in 2018 for selling illegal prescriptions in Wisconsin. He is not a doctor. He is a fraud. The doctor slumped in his chair. Harrison turned to the lawyer. And Mr. Davies, real name Mark D'Angelo, disbarred in Illinois 3 years ago for witness tampering, also a fraud. Rachel let out a broken sob. Brian, you told me they were real. And finally, I said. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out my small, silver digital recorder. I placed it on the table. Evelyn, my wife, reached into her purse, pulled out her recorder, and placed it right next to mine. Harrison tapped a third larger audio player. This, Harrison said, looking at Brian, is the recording of you, Brian, threatening your own mother. The recording where you detailed Plan B. The one where you planned to have them both committed to a state-run nursing home to rot together if she didn't cooperate. I believe involuntary committal was the exact phrase you used. The room was absolutely silent. Brian looked at the files. He looked at the recorders. He looked at me. He looked at his mother, who was now standing next to me, her hand in mine. The arrogance, the confidence, the greed, it all shattered. It just dissolved, leaving a hollow, terrified shell. He finally understood. He knew he was not just caught. He was buried. He did not yell. He did not protest. He just made a sound. A low, guttural moan. And my son, my only son, the man I had given my entire life to, collapsed into his chair and put his face in his hands. It was over. Brian did not yell. He did not protest. He just made a sound. A low, guttural moan that seemed to come from the deepest part of his soul. He just sat there, my only son, the man I had given my entire life to, and stared at the pile of evidence on the table. The gambling debts, the forgeries, the audio recordings of his own voice threatening his mother. He put his face in his hands. His expensive tailored suit jacket hitched up as his shoulders began to shake. He was not crying. It was a dry, racking sob. The sound of a man whose entire world had just been reduced to ashes. The sound of a man who knew his life was over. Rachel, my daughter-in-law, was a different story. Her face, which had been pale with shock, turned a blotchy, furious red. "Brian!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Brian, do something! Tell them, it's a lie! Tell them your father is confused!" He did not even look up. "Brian!" she screamed again, lunging at him, grabbing his arm. You promised me we would be set. You said he was a senile old fool. You said it." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down," one of the officers said, stepping forward. "No," Rachel spat, turning on him. "You can't do this. This is our company. He's incompetent. We were just trying to help him." The officer did not even blink. He just looked at Harrison. Harrison nodded. "That's Rachel Foster, Brian's wife. She was present during the planning of the conservatorship. She's an accessory." "Accessory?" Rachel's voice went thin. "I didn't do anything. He did it. He did everything. I just listened." The two police officers stepped forward. They moved with a calm, professional efficiency that was terrifying. One officer walked behind Brian. He put a hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Brian Foster, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and attempted grand larceny." Brian did not resist. He let out a long, shuddering sigh. He lifted his head from his hands. His face was a mask of utter despair. He looked at me. His eyes were dead. The officer pulled Brian's hands behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was a sharp, metallic sound in the silent, expensive room. It was the sound of a cell door slamming shut. I watched them cuff my son. My son. I looked at Evelyn. She had her hand over her mouth, and she was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. This was not victory for her. This was a mother watching her child be led to the slaughter. Even after everything he had done, everything he had threatened to do, he was still her boy. The second officer approached Rachel. "Ma'am, you're also under arrest for conspiracy." "No!" she screamed, backing away, knocking over a chair. Get away from me, Brian. Tell them I had nothing to do with it. Brian just stared at the table, a broken man. Rachel turned on him, her face contorted with pure, unfiltered hatred. You weak, useless fool. You couldn't even get this right. You ruined everything. The officers did not care. They took her arms, one on each side, and cuffed her as she struggled and cursed. It was over. The plot, the plan, the lies. My son and his wife stood there in handcuffs in my conference room, surrounded by the evidence of their monstrous betrayal. I had won. But I had never in my entire life felt so much like I had lost. The officer put his hand on Brian's shoulder. Mr. Brian Foster, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and attempted grand larceny. The words were calm, professional, but they landed like bombs in the silent room. Brian just stared. He looked at me, his eyes wide and blank. He looked at his mother. No, Evelyn whispered. She took a step forward. Please. He's sick. He's our son. The officer ignored her. He was all business. Hands behind your back. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was a sharp, metallic sound that echoed off the mahogany table. The sound of a life ending. The sound of my life's work, my legacy failing. That sound, that click, is what finally broke Brian. He let out a roar. It was not a word. It was an animal sound. A sound of pure, cornered rage. No! He screamed, trying to pull away. Get your hands off me! The second officer moved in, and in an instant they had him. They were efficient. They twisted his arms behind him. Brian, my son, 42 years old, the vice president, was struggling against 2 police officers in my boardroom. Mom! He screamed, his eyes wild, finding Evelyn. Mom, do something! Tell them they can't do this. Tell them he's confused. Tell them he's the crazy one. Evelyn just collapsed against the wall, sobbing. Oh, Brian! Oh my God, Brian! The second officer turned to Rachel. Ma'am, you're under arrest for conspiracy. Rachel, unlike Brian, did not collapse. She turned vicious. Conspiracy! She shrieked, her voice like shattering glass. You're arresting me! He's the one! The useless, pathetic! You! She lunged at Brian, trying to kick him even while he was being held. You weak, stupid, useless fool! You couldn't even get this right! You promised me we would be set! You ruined everything! She was a cornered rat, biting at everything. The officer grabbed her. Stop resisting, ma'am. Get off of me! You can't touch me! Do you know who we are? This is our company. While this chaos erupted, my family tearing itself apart, the 2 men they hired were perfectly still. The doctor, Arthur Finch, and the lawyer, Mark D'Angelo, had not moved. They were professionals, just at a different, darker trade. They knew the rules. When the police show up, you shut your mouth. The officer turned to them. You 2, stand up, hands on the table. Finch, the doctor, just sighed as if this was an inconvenience like missing a train. D'Angelo, the lawyer, just said, I'm not saying a word. I want my lawyer. They were cuffed, silent, professional. But Brian, my son, he was still fighting. He was crying now, hot, angry, desperate tears. He was looking at me. His face was red. He was pinned against the conference table. Dad! He screamed, his voice cracking. Dad! Please tell them to stop. It was a misunderstanding. It was just paperwork. It was a mistake. It was not a mistake, Brian, I said. My voice was quiet. Yes, it was, he roared. He was pleading. I'm sick, Dad. I'm sick. I have a problem. You can't send me to jail for being sick. It's not fair. You're right, I said. You are sick, but you're not going to jail for being sick. Then tell them to stop, he cried, hope flooding his eyes. Tell them to let me go. We'll fix it. I'll go to rehab. I'll do anything. You're not going to jail for gambling, Brian, I said, my voice cold. You're going to jail for forgery. You're going to jail for embezzlement. You're going to jail for trying to hire these two crooks to declare me legally insane so you could steal $15 million. That is not a sickness, Brian. That is a choice. The hope died in his eyes. It was replaced by a pure black hatred. He lunged. He actually lunged at me, even in handcuffs. The officers yanked him back hard. You, he screamed, his face turning purple. You did this. You set me up. You set up your own son. Let's go, the officer said, starting to pull him toward the door. You can't do this to me, Brian bellowed, digging his heels in, fighting them every step of the way. I am your son. I am your son. You can't do this. He kept screaming it all the way down the hall. I'm your son. I'm your son. The words echoed in the empty building, and I just stood there listening to the words, feeling nothing but a vast, cold emptiness. The officers led them out. Rachel was still spitting curses. The two fakes were silent. And Brian, I could still hear him screaming even as the elevator doors dinged shut. I'm your son, I'm your son. The words hung in the air of my conference room in the absolute deafening silence. It was just me and Evelyn. She was still slumped against the wall, her body racked with silent sobs. She slid down until she was sitting on the expensive carpet. Greg, she whispered. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was the voice of a ghost. Greg, how could you? He's... I knew what she was going to say. I knew what she was feeling. The loyalty of a mother. It is a terrible, powerful, blind thing. He's our son, she finished, her voice breaking. He's our boy. I walked over to the window. I looked down at the city lights. They were just beginning to glitter in the twilight. My city. I did not turn around. I spoke to her reflection in the dark glass. He kept saying that, I said. My voice was calm. It scared me how calm I was. He kept screaming it all the way to the elevator. I'm your son. I turned to face her. She was a broken heap on the floor. I've been thinking about that word, Evelyn, son. I walked over to the table and picked up the involuntary conservatorship petition. I held it up. A son does not do this, I said. A son does not forge his father's name on loan documents. A son does not embezzle hundreds of thousands of dollars from the company that was supposed to be his inheritance. She flinched. A son? I continued walking toward her. Does not find out his mother is being threatened by gangsters, that his grandson is being targeted, and then decide to use that terror. He doesn't threaten to throw his own mother into a state-run home to rot. He's sick, Greg, she cried. The addiction made him gamble, I said, my voice rising. The addiction did not make him evil. The addiction did not make him hire two frauds to declare his own father mentally incompetent. He did that. He looked me in the eye and tried to trick me into signing away my life. He planned to destroy us both. I crouched down in front of her. I was 70 years old, but I felt a strength I had not felt in years. That thing they just dragged out of here, Evie, that was not our son. Our son, the boy we raised, the boy we were proud of. He died a long time ago. He died the first time he chose a poker chip over his family. He died the first time he forged my name. He died when he threatened you. What they arrested tonight, that was just the monster he became. She looked at me, her face a mask of agony. So what now? She whispered. Now. I stood up. I looked at the mess in my boardroom, the overturned chair, the scattered papers, the ruins of my family. He called me fuzzy. He called me confused. But I was never confused about this. He made his choice, Evelyn. He made his choice every single day for 5 years. And tonight, I just made mine. I watched them walk him down the long corridor. My corridor. The one I had walked down every morning for 40 years. I watched my son Brian in handcuffs being led away by two men who did not care that he was my son. He was just another number. Just another case file. He was not screaming anymore. The fight was gone. He was just gone. A hollowed-out shell of the man I thought I knew. I felt Evelyn's hand find mine. She was shaking. Or maybe I was. I could not tell. I should have felt victorious. I had won. I had protected my company. I had protected my wife. I had stopped the monster. But all I felt was this vast, cold emptiness. It was a feeling of profound, irreversible loss. It was not like the grief I felt when my parents died. That was a natural, sad ending to a long life. This was an amputation. I was watching a part of myself, a part of my past, a part of my future, being cut off and led away to prison. The boy I had taught to read. The young man whose MBA diploma I had framed on my own office wall. The heir I had bragged about at the country club. He was gone. And the worst part, the part that settled in my stomach like cold lead, was the realization that I was relieved. I was heartbroken. I was devastated. But underneath it all, I was relieved. Relieved that the lies were over. Relieved that the secrets were done. Relieved that I never again had to wonder if my son was plotting against me. I never again had to check my bank statements for forged signatures. I never again had to look at my wife and wonder what secrets she was keeping. The nightmare was over. But the nightmare was my son. I had not just lost him tonight. I realized I had lost him years ago. I had lost him to the flickering lights of an online poker screen. I had lost him to the thrill of a bet. I had lost him to a greed that I had mistaken for ambition. What they took out of here tonight was just the stranger who had been living in his skin. My son. My real son. He was long gone. And that was a grief I knew I would carry silently for the rest of my life. The aftermath was swift, and it was brutal. Based on the evidence we provided Harrison's surveillance and the names Evelyn had given them, the police moved on the loan sharks. 2 days later, the Costello crew was brought down. The newspapers were plastered with photos of the men who had threatened my wife and grandson. They were not just loan sharks. They were involved in everything. Drug trafficking, extortion. Brian had not just made a deal with the devil. He had invited the devil into our home. But the arrests did not save the company. The scandal was a bomb that detonated in the center of Foster Holdings. The headlines were merciless. Foster heir arrested in gambling and fraud ring. Foster Holdings implicated in multi-million-dollar conspiracy. CEO's son plotted to have father committed. We were toxic. The phones did not stop ringing, but they were not calls for new business. They were calls from clients. Clients I had known for decades. They were pulling their contracts. Greg, I'm sorry, one of them, a man I played golf with, told me. I can't have my company associated with this. You understand. The optics are terrible. I understood. Within a week, we lost 30% of our active projects. Our credit lines were frozen. The bank that had financed my entire career now saw me as a liability. The company I had spent 40 years building, the company I had sacrificed everything for, it was bleeding out. And it was my own son who had held the knife. I stood in the boardroom. The chairs were overturned. The police were gone. The silence was deafening. But the real destruction was just beginning. I was 70 years old, and I was facing bankruptcy. The headlines were merciless. Foster heir arrested in gambling and fraud ring. Foster Holdings implicated in multi-million-dollar conspiracy. CEO's son plotted to have father committed. We were toxic. The phones did not stop ringing. But they were not calls for new business. They were calls from clients. Clients I had known for decades. Men I had played golf with. They were pulling their contracts. "Greg, I'm sorry." One of them, a man named Tom, told me over the phone. "I can't have my company associated with this. You understand. The optics are terrible." I understood. I lost 6 major accounts in 48 hours. Then the bank called. The bank that had funded my first dump truck 40 years ago. They were freezing our credit lines. Harrison's investigation had uncovered the forged loan documents. Brian had not just stolen from me. He had used the company's credentials to commit fraud against them. The company I had spent my entire life building, the company I had sacrificed my youth for. It was bleeding out. It was dying. And it was my own son who had held the knife. I was sitting in my office at 3 in the morning, staring at foreclosure notices. I was ruined. Evelyn walked in. She had not slept. Her eyes were red, but she was not crying anymore. She looked different. The fear was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard steel I had not seen in years. "Greg," she said. Her voice was steady. "I've been going to that meeting at the Shady Pines for 6 months. I've been lying to you, but I've also been listening." "Listening to what, Evie?" I said. My voice was just tired. "Listening to other people cry. Listening to their stories," she said. "And listening to who they are." She picked up her phone. "I made a call. I told them the whole truth, what Brian did, what he tried to do to us. They're coming over." "Who's coming over, Evie?" I said, the bitterness sharp in my voice. "Your crying circle. What are they going to do, knit us a new company?" "They're the people who understand," she said, "and they're coming now." An hour later they arrived, not at the office, at our house. The 7 men from Leo's call. It was not 7 men, it was a group of 8, 5 men, 3 women. They walked into my living room and I expected, I do not know, sad, broken people. But the people who walked into my house were not broken. They were sharpened by their pain. A man with cold, clear eyes wearing a suit that cost more than my car shook my hand. "Greg, my name is Arthur Jensen. You do not know me. My daughter lost her house and her kids to a meth addiction. I'm also the senior partner at Jensen and Croft. I am the top bankruptcy attorney in the state of Illinois." A woman in a sharp pantsuit sat down. She did not waste time. "Diane Ray. My son is serving 5 years at Joliet for embezzlement. I'm a forensic accountant. I specialize in finding hidden assets and clawing back stolen money from shell companies." Another man, older with a notepad, looked at me. "Mark Collins. My grandson overdosed 2 years ago after stealing my retirement. I'm a senior investigative reporter at the Chicago Tribune. I specialize in taking down organized crime rings." I looked at them. The 7 men from the motel. They were not just victims. They were a secret army. They were lawyers, accountants, journalists, executives. They were the most powerful people in the city, all brought together by the one awful, tragic thing they had in common. A child who had tried to destroy them. They were the Shady Pines support group, and they were here. In my living room. Arthur Jensen, the lawyer, looked at Evelyn. His expression was full of a respect I had not seen from anyone in weeks. "Evelyn," he said, "you are one of us. You suffered in silence. You protected your family. Your husband. He's been wronged. We are not going to let this stand." Diane, the accountant, opened a briefcase. "We are not doing this for money, Greg. We have plenty of money. We're doing this because we hate what people like your son do. We hate what these loan sharks do. And we are very, very good at taking them apart piece by piece." Mark, the reporter, pulled out his pen. "So here's what we do. Diane, you tear Brian's and Rachel's finances apart. Find every dollar he stole. Arthur, you handle the bankruptcy restructuring. We'll use Brian's involuntary conservatorship petition as proof of malicious intent to sue him civilly and claw back every asset he bought with stolen funds. And he said, I will write the real story, not the story of a confused old man, the story of a criminal son and the parents he betrayed. We're going to change the narrative, Greg. Arthur Jensen looked at me. We are going to save your company, and we are going to bury your son. 6 months. That is how long it took for the case to go to trial. 6 months of living in a strange limbo. Our company, Foster Holdings, was a war zone. Arthur Jensen, the lawyer from the support group, was our general. He and Diane, the forensic accountant, were knee-deep in the wreckage, fighting off the banks, renegotiating contracts, and preparing the civil suits against Brian and Rachel to claw back every stolen dollar. But now it was criminal court. I put on my best suit, the one I used to wear to sign multi-million-dollar deals. Now I was wearing it to testify against my own son. The courtroom was cold, impersonal. I sat next to Evelyn. Her hand in mine was like a block of ice. She had not slept in days. Brian was already there, sitting at the defendant's table with his public defender. He looked different. The 6 months in county jail forced sober had changed him. He was thin. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by an ill-fitting one. The arrogant, slick vice president was gone. He just looked like a pale, hollowed-out man. He would not look at us. Rachel sat a few feet away with her own lawyer. She was also pale, but her eyes were hard. She was a survivor. She was glaring at Brian as if this was all still somehow his fault. My name was called first. Gregory Foster. I walked to the stand. I swore on the Bible. I sat down. I did not look at Brian. I looked at the prosecutor. For 2 hours, I laid it all out. The forged loan documents, the fabricated invoices, the consultant fees that were just wires to offshore accounts, the Plan B folder, the fake doctor Arthur Finch, the fake lawyer Mark D'Angelo, and finally, the prosecutor held it up, the involuntary conservatorship petition. Mr. Foster, he asked, is this the document your son asked you to sign? Yes, I said. He told me it was a $5 million trust. He told me it was to protect me. He brought a fake doctor to my office to declare me incompetent so he could steal my entire estate. The courtroom was silent. I said it all. I laid out the facts, coldly, clinically, like I was describing a failed construction project. Then it was Evelyn's turn. I watched my wife walk to the stand. She looked like she had aged 20 years. She looked like a piece of glass ready to shatter. The prosecutor was gentle, but the questions were brutal. Mrs. Foster, when did you first learn of your son's gambling? About 5 years ago, she whispered. And when did you first learn about the loan sharks? Evelyn's hand went to her mouth. She started to cry, softly at first. They came to the house 6 months ago. And what did they say, Mrs. Foster? Evelyn looked at me, her eyes filled with a pain that I knew I would never, ever forget. They had pictures, she sobbed. Pictures of my grandson, my little Leo. They said, if I didn't pay, if Brian didn't pay, accidents happen. They were going to hurt my grandson. And that's when you gave them your life savings. Yes, she whispered. $520,000. Everything I had. And it wasn't enough. It was just an interest payment. And Plan B, Mrs. Foster. The plan to have your husband committed. She could not look at me. He threatened me. Brian did. He said if I told Greg, he would have us both put in a home. To rot. The court reporter had to ask her to repeat the word. To rot. She was a mother testifying that her own son had threatened to bury her alive. It was the most terrible thing I had ever witnessed. We sat there for 3 days. Finally, it was Brian's turn. His lawyer told him to plead the fifth, to say nothing. But Brian stood up. He looked calm. He looked clear-eyed for the first time in a decade. "I don't want a lawyer," he said. His voice was hoarse but steady. I don't want to plead anything. I want to confess." His lawyer tried to stop him, but Brian waved him off. He turned. He did not look at the judge. He looked at us. He looked at me. And he looked at his mother. "It's all true," he said. "Everything they said. The gambling, the stealing, the forgeries, all of it." He took a deep breath. The plan. Plan B. That was me. The doctor. The lawyer. The threat. To put them in a home. That was me. Tears started to roll down his face, but his voice did not break. I don't know who I was," he whispered. The addiction, it eats you. It eats your soul. But it doesn't. It doesn't make the choices. I made the choices. I threatened my own mother. I tried to destroy my own father, the man who gave me everything. He looked right at me. "Dad, Mom, I am so sorry. I was a monster. I was a monster. And I am sorry." He just stood there crying silently. He did not ask for pity. He did not make any more excuses. He just admitted it. The judge was an older man. He looked at Brian for a long time. He took into account Brian's full confession. He took into account his cooperation, which had led to the arrest of the Costello loan shark crew and the disbarment of D'Angelo and the conviction of Finch. He looked at the evidence, the mountains of it. "Brian Foster," the judge said. His voice echoed in the room. "For the charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, grand larceny, embezzlement, and felony elder abuse, I sentence you to 20 years in the state penitentiary." Evelyn let out a choked cry. "However," the judge continued, "due to your full cooperation with the state and your confession, this court will reduce that sentence. You are hereby sentenced to 10 years. 10 years. He turned to Rachel. She had also cooperated, testifying against Brian in exchange for a plea. "Rachel Foster, for your role as an accessory to conspiracy, this court sentences you to 3 years of formal probation and 500 hours of community service. You will also pay restitution." The gavel came down. Bang. It was the sound of a family. Broken. Officially. Finally. 10 years. My son. 10 years. It has been a year. A full year since the gavel came down. 10 years. My son is 1 year into a 10-year sentence. Foster Holdings. Well, it is not Foster Holdings anymore. We changed the name. Rebranded. We are Foster and Associates now. It felt cleaner. Arthur Jensen, the lawyer from the support group, he was a miracle worker. He and Diane, the accountant, they were like surgeons. They cut out the rot. They renegotiated the contracts. They dealt with the banks. Mark Collins, the reporter, he published the real story. The story of a father betrayed, of a mother threatened, of a company saved. It was not easy. We lost almost half our business. But we survived. We are stable. The company is smaller now, leaner. But it is honest. It is clean. The foundation is solid again. I am 71 years old, and I am back in the CEO chair. I never wanted to be. But I have to. I have to rebuild what he broke. Evelyn and I, we are different. The 45 years we had before that, is gone. We are building something new, something quieter, more honest. We do not hide things anymore. We cannot. We have seen the abyss. We know what happens when you do not talk. We were sitting in the living room last night, just reading. The house is quiet now. It is too quiet sometimes. The front door opened and closed. It was Leo, our grandson. He is 18 now. When Brian and Rachel were convicted, well, Leo had nowhere to go. Rachel's parents did not want him. They blamed him for the phone call. They blamed him for starting all this. As if the boy was the criminal. He lives with us now, in Brian's old room. He walked in, dropped his backpack by the door. He is tall now, taller than me. He has his father's eyes. Sometimes that is hard. "Hey," he said. "Hey kid," I said. How was the meeting?" He does not go to Gamanon. He goes to something else. A counseling group. For teenagers. Teenagers whose parents are addicts. Whose lives were blown up by someone else's sickness. He shrugged. It was okay. A new girl came. Her mom, same story. Different drug. He sat down in the armchair that used to be Brian's. He looked at us. He looked at me, and then at Evelyn. "We talked about anger," he said, staring at his hands. Evelyn put her book down. "What about anger, honey? Just how long you're allowed to be angry? At them, at your parents." He looked at me. Are you still angry at him, at Dad?" I looked at my grandson. This kid who had lost both his parents in one night. This kid who had been threatened by gangsters because of his own father. This kid who made the phone call that saved my life. "Yeah, Leo," I said. My voice was rough. "Yeah, I am. I think a part of me will always be angry." "Me too," he whispered. Evelyn got up. She walked over and sat on the arm of his chair. She put her hand on his hair. "It's okay to be angry, Leo. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be whatever you are. We're not fuzzy here. Not anymore." He leaned his head against her, and I watched my wife comfort my grandson. The three of us. That is what is left. The survivors. We are a different kind of family now. Not the perfect smiling one from the photographs on the mantel. We are a broken family. But we are healing. Together. We are building a new foundation. This one is not built on pride or money. It is built on the truth. On the ugly, painful truth. And it is the strongest foundation I have ever had. It is funny. For 2 days I was convinced I was losing my mind. I was the fuzzy old dad my son wanted me to be. I was the confused old man my wife had described. I have learned a lot in the last year. I learned that fuzzy is not about losing your mind. It is about misplacing your trust. I was not senile. I was trusting. I trusted my wife of 45 years. I trusted the son I had given my entire life to. I trusted the foundation I thought I had built. And he used that trust against me. He used my love as a weapon. My son thought I was a fool. He thought I was finished. He thought I was an old man, easy to push into a dark room and forget about. He was wrong. That phone call from Leo, my grandson, it felt like a disaster. Grandma at a motel with 7 men. It was the beginning of the end of my world. But I was wrong too. That phone call was not the disaster. That phone call was the alarm bell. It was the lighthouse in the fog. It was the one tiny accidental flash of truth in a house built on lies. That phone call, it did not destroy my life. It saved it. My name is Gregory Foster. I am 71 years old. I am not a deluded old man. I am not a fuzzy old fool. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. And I am rebuilding. I learned a hard lesson. A lesson that I, Gregory Foster, at 71 years old, had to pay for with almost everything I had. I spent 45 years building Foster Holdings. I gave my son Brian everything: the vice presidency, a beautiful home, and my complete total trust. And he, with his mother's help, called me a fuzzy old man. They thought my age meant I was weak. They thought confused meant I was stupid. They had a plan B, to put me in a nursing home to rot and to steal my entire $15 million estate. They were wrong. I built an empire. I was not fuzzy. I was trusting. That was my mistake. I was so blinded by my love for my son that I signed the checks. I funded his investments, which were really just gambling debts. I enabled him. The first lesson I learned is this: do not ever confuse blind love with trust. Trust is something that must be earned, and it must be verified, even with your own blood. When my grandson Leo called me, he said he saw his grandmother at the Shady Pines motel with 7 men. I thought it was an affair. I prepared for that betrayal. But the truth was 1,000 times worse. The 7 men were just other broken parents in a support group. My wife Evelyn was a victim too. The real betrayal was my son's plan B, his plan to have me declared insane. The second lesson is this: when your gut tells you something is wrong, the truth is usually far worse than you can possibly imagine. Do not ever ignore your instincts. I had to act. I had to hire a private investigator. I had to play the part of a senile old man to set a trap for my own son. The final lesson is this: sometimes to save your own life, you have to stop being a father, and you have to start being a warrior. If my story touched you, if you have ever felt betrayed by the very people you love the most, if you have ever been underestimated, called too old, or confused by the people you gave everything to, please hit that like button. Subscribe to my channel. You will not want to miss what happened next. How Evelyn and I and my grandson Leo, how we are rebuilding everything from the ashes. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? And what time is it where you are? Have you ever had to make a painful choice between your family and the truth? Have you ever been called fuzzy or senile by the very people you gave everything to? Share your story. I read every single comment. It helps this old man know he is not alone.